Williams.
Hello and welcome to this Eureka City Council meeting, Tuesday, July 7th, 2026. We're glad you're all here, and it's great to see everybody after a lovely 4th of July. We're going to go ahead and start with the land acknowledgement. The land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jirojiji. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments remove the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threaten to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledged the Wiyot community, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Moulton?
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Here.
Councilmember Bauer?
Here.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloche?
Here.
And Mayor Burgell?
Here. And would all who care to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, this chair. All right, and City Attorney Black, is there a report out of closed session?
Mayor, no reportable actions were taken in closed session.
Thank you. I just have two mayor announcements tonight. The first one, I just really want to thank our staff, Swan, Amanda, Madison, Sarah West, and Kay, as well as our special voluntold, Dean Krushke, for the excellent job that was had down in Old Town this last weekend for 4th of July. If you went, you know, it was so much fun. It was great to see our community out there enjoying each other, kids having fun, everybody having fun. No incidences, just a really good time. And that doesn't happen on its own. That happens with the strong and committed dedication of our staff. The fact that they are willing to do that, I really appreciate that they gave up their time to make that happen, because I myself had a fabulous time. And I also want to thank Humboldt Bay Fire, as well as the Coast Guard, and also Brad Curtis. He sang the national anthem the morning of the 4th of July, where the colors were posted, and we had a flyover from the Coast Guard. So it was a really beautiful, beautiful day on the 250th anniversary of our country. So that was amazing. And just as a sidebar, just something that'll be happening, and with that is that the Ingomar Club over in the mansion, they are having lights for the 4th of July. They're having a light show every night from 9 p.m. to 9:12. I timed it. I walked down there last night. It's pretty fun. If you haven't been, it's 15 minutes, but it's the lights actually dance to the music. It's super fun. So if you get an opportunity, that's happening 9 to 9:12 tonight through Monday. So, yeah, that's all my mayor's announcements. We have no presentations this evening, so this brings us to public comment. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. The City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers, and pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. And I see Joanne over there, so come on up, Joanne. Welcome.
Eureka City Council, my name is Joanne McGarry. I live in Arcata. I take the bus often, and in fact I took it twice today.
Oh, your mic's not on, Joanne. Is it green now?
I was looking at this. Okay, thank you. My name's Joanne McGarry. I live in Arcata. I take the bus to Eureka often to enjoy things like the 4th of July, which I attended early in the morning and watched Young and Lovely sing. And I was taking the bus twice from Arcata today because I spoke up about these same issues at the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I speak in threes sometimes, so get used to that. I want to talk about fireworks, animal welfare, and climate action. And I guess first about the fireworks, I've been long trying to suggest that our communities, for many reasons, climate and human welfare and animal welfare and the environment, that we do things differently. And I'm looking forward to maybe sticking around for that light show, if not tonight, another night at the Carson Mansion. There is a local man who has done laser shows in San Francisco to much success. And I think we really need to start looking at alternatives to bombs bursting in air and debris falling in things like reflecting pools in Washington, D.C., and animals being harmed. So I'm going to tell you that I've been in touch with the person who runs the online Humboldt Paws Cause, and I asked that person to give me a number of reports of lost or found animals, and over the 4th of July weekend, and there was 83 reports of lost or found animals, primarily dogs. Some of them were in pairs, so 83 is not necessarily the number of animals that were found loose or lost loose in the city, probably much of them due to the fireworks backyard and otherwise. So 4 of those dogs died. They were hit by cars. So that's the number over the weekend of animals that were harmed and lost. And they wouldn't have been probably had they not been afraid of the noises. So that's what I want to talk about there. And finally, climate action. As I said to the Board of Supervisors, I am going to grumble about the rumble. We as a community are lucky to have decent temperatures, even though we'd like a little sun. But other places in the world are really, really suffering from the heat. 20,000 people died in Europe with their latest heat wave. And things that are polluting our airs in our community are affecting people in other parts of the world. And we as a climate commitment need to do better.
Thank you, Joanne. Is there anyone else in chambers who'd like to comment on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no one. Do you see anybody on Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
So we will close the public comment. And this brings us to council reports. And we will start with Councilmember Castellano.
Okay. Since our last city council meeting, I attended Black Humboldt's Juneteenth celebration and their drag brunch. I also attended and participated in a community conversation on homelessness. I attended the special meeting for Humboldt Waste Management Authority and the Humboldt Transit Authority meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Moulton?
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last meeting, I attended the Chamber of Commerce 2x2 was actually right before our last meeting. So it looks like a Humboldt Bay Fire meeting doing its budget review season, which is always challenging. So there we are. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Working backwards, the July 4th events in Old Town. It was nice seeing folks out. It was very lively. It was fantastic having as many people as we did from out of the area. Same as other council members. Also attended the Black Humboldt Juneteenth celebration that they had at Halverson. And then I think somewhere in between those two, took a trip to Bennington, Arkansas, of all places, for a policy institute hosted by the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. It was an institute on technology and AI use in emergency management. Here's what comes off a bowl of strawberries. Like to hear more about those strawberries, but another day. Yeah, I was in Arkansas, and the town that we were in, much more diverse than I'd originally thought. And it was, again, fantastic opportunity to connect with folks in similar situations such as ourselves. The topics covered were about national landscape, which largely we're not going to see a lot, if any, federal assistance in terms of emergency. And so we're largely relying on states and public-private partnerships Learned quite a bit about that the second day, which was hosted at a Walmart operations center, because their logistics just worldwide as a private institution are very difficult to beat outside of our own U.S. military. But the second day was hosted by them on site, as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Again, heavy emphasis on public-private partnerships, but where else are we supposed to turn to at a moment where the federal government isn't there to help us where we need to be? So relying largely on whatever relationships we can make in-state and through our own local avenues. For what it's worth, California compared to other states is really at the top of the list when it comes to how we provide for our communities in emergent situations. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I attended a Cal Cities Finance Committee meeting representing the Redwood Empire Division. I think there was a Friday night market or two in there since our last council meeting. Humboldt Bay Fire meeting, and Councilmember Moulton talked about that. I also attended an RCEA board meeting. 4th of July celebration was kind of ruined by the fog, but it's kind of typical for Humboldt County. And I've been watching a lot of World Cup and being very sad to the last night's result. Thanks.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloach. Thank you. Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had quite a bit of housing meetings. I attended the Humboldt Interfaith meeting at Temple Bethel. Our director, Kristen Kenyon, gave a really excellent presentation at that, and it was received really well. We have a lot of people who are eager to participate in SB4, which is the law that changed opening up housing opportunities for churches. Also attended a meeting. I don't know if we reported out on this yet or not, Mayor. I don't think we did. Mayor Burgell and Pastor Brosey from Harvest Church had organized another interfaith meeting, and that one was pretty well attended. About 20 people, I think, or so came to that. And we were also talking about a variety of solutions, rehabilitation solutions, housing solutions, and that kind of thing. That was also a really excellent meeting. I attended the Humboldt Bay Fire meeting as a fly on the wall. And then I also went to the 4th of July festival and some Friday night markets. The festival was really well done. Thank you for everybody, the staff and everybody that put in so much work to make such a great time for everyone. I thought it was really well done. I didn't stay all the way through the fireworks. And then met with the Lodging Alliance and had a transportation meeting, learning about kind of safer alternatives to look at. And yeah, that's the highlights.
Great. Thank you. And I also have a few things that I attended. So maybe going backwards. So I attended the Pack Out Green team. I attended 2 of their cleanups since the last council meeting. I know I say this every time, but seriously, friends, if you have not gone out with them, you're missing out. It's a lot of fun to be with community. I brought together, Councilmember Contreras-Deloach had mentioned a meeting with the local pastors. In that meeting, discussing homelessness and primarily 3rd Street at Freemill. In that meeting, we discussed the fact that our city has a compassion crisis and that faith leaders certainly, not that they have the cornerstone on that, but certainly can be a part of the solution in that with their congregations. At the end of that meeting, I'm just going to put it out there. At the end of that meeting, there were probably 13 to 20 people in that meeting. There was a challenge from a member, 20 minutes. The challenge was that each pastor, each person would spend 20 minutes at free meal. 20 minutes in a month. 4 people from that entire group, 4, made the call and showed up. 4. It was very, very disappointing and disheartening, to say the least. And one of the 4 was actually not even a pastor. It was a Rotarian, service above self. So I was very disappointed at the outcome of that meeting. We will be having a follow-up meeting with those folks. And hopefully, we can get them to come out and at least have an experience, because when we know better, we do better. We fear what we don't understand, and just having that moment of time can truly make a difference in someone's life and even in our own. So that That was really kind of a bummer. It was a big bummer, honestly. I toured Teen Challenge, and that was really great. And we got a guy in the next day from Free Meal, so that was exciting. I went to the Boys and Girls Club event. I walked during the human trafficking walk for the ladies that have been trafficked and survived, and the women that are still out there. Such an important thing. And that is a problem here in Humboldt. Just in case you thought it was just other places, it definitely happens here in Humboldt. And I think it's really important to highlight that. Let's see. I attended the HCOG meeting. We did hire a new executive director, and I'll tell you who it is next month. I did spend some time at Free Meal. I was a judge at the Ferry Festival, which was a super lot of fun. People ask, well, why were you hanging out in Arcata? Because, we're a community. We're a community, and, that's what we do, right? We try and reach out to each other and get along. I had a meeting about the monument I'm working on. Went to the Clark drag show, which was super fun. Went to the Friday night markets, went to the Thursday night concerts. Went on a tour with some friends of mine who came to town. It's always good to play tour guide, and I got to take them on the Matticat and the zoo and really just show off our incredible city. I love doing that. It's like one of my favorite things. And then lastly, for 4th of July, I did go. The Ingomar did have free photographs for families, so you could go at 5 o'clock. They had a professional photographer that took your picture, and then you had a QR code. So that was I thought that was really neat that they were willing to do that. And then also they had the light show. And then I ended up down at the at the Matticat Plaza with DJ Rad for 45 minutes dancing with a bunch of 4-year-olds. They have a lot of energy. I'm just going to tell you, especially at the end of the day, I was spent. So that's what I've been up to. News at 11. No. We'll let you know what the outcome of our next pastor meeting is. I'm really hopeful that people will stand up 20 minutes of your time, really, honestly. I would encourage any people just in the community to spend 20 minutes. I think it probably has the potential to change your life. It certainly changed mine. So with that, we'll move to consent calendar. The minutes are pulled and will not be discussed tonight. So notice to the public, all matters listed under this category are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. Pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22, if a member of the public would like an item on the consent calendar pulled and discussed separately, the request shall be made to a council member prior to the meeting. Unless a specific request is made by a council member, the consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items. And I've heard no one wanted anything pulled, is that right? So if we get a motion to approve, minus G1.
Motion to approve the consent calendar minus G1.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. This takes us to legislative action correspondence. Nothing? Wrong season? Okay. All right, this moves us to ordinances and resolutions. A discussion about Opportunity Zone 2.0 application with Project Manager West. Yes. Hello and welcome.
Good evening, Council. I am Sarah West, Project Manager with Economic Development. Tonight, I'm presenting for your consideration a resolution of support for Eureka to apply to have several census tracts within our community designated as Opportunity Zones 2.0. I'm going to start with some background on Opportunity Zones and then go over the state's application process and what we are proposing to apply for. Okay, so some background. Opportunity zones, what are they? Opportunity zones are a federal program meant to encourage private investment in low-income communities using capital gains tax incentives. Established in 2017, they appear to be on a 10-year cycle, so we are nearing 10 years, and they are doing a 2.0 process, and this 2.0 selection process will be good for 10 years, and then it sounds like they will revisit this program again. So Eureka has a 1.0 designation. You can see to the right on the map where we currently have Opportunity Zone 1.0. While the program was launched in 2017, it took a couple years for guidance and policies to really be established for investors to feel confident they knew what they were doing and what the incentives would truly look like. But even with that, about 4 years of this program fully up and running, we haven't heard of any folks using this incentive here in Eureka. It's not an uncommon experience. A lot of rural communities had this feedback. And we are the type of community that this program is aiming to uplift. So what they've done is now they have gone through and created a 2.0 process that is meant to improve the incentives and hopefully do a better job of incentivizing the development they want to see in economically challenged communities. So there are enhanced incentives, particularly for rural areas, which all of our census tracts qualify as. This process will be more competitive than the 1.0 process, but the upside of that is that if there are fewer zones, there is a stronger incentive to invest in the zones that do exist. So if we get a designation, I feel really hopeful that we could see some investment. At its heart, this is a capital gains tax incentive for private equity. It gives tax breaks to investors, but private equity can really make the difference in giving a project legs. Many projects in Eureka never manifest, not because they aren't possible or a good idea, but because financial investment isn't there. Developers often rely on private investors to fill the gap between their own capital and loans, and it can be challenging to entice investors to choose our community over larger metro areas when they have larger metro areas have a more obvious and maybe easier return. So this program is meant to incentivize investment in communities and help it pencil out a little bit better. It's often termed patient equity, meaning that traditional private equity often expects an exit in 3 to 7 years, but Opportunity Zone investors receive the greatest tax benefit by holding for at least 10 years. This is really good for communities like ours where redevelopment projects may take longer to mature than projects in other areas. So they structured this program to incentivize development in a way that supports the harder to do projects in rural areas. I want to highlight that while this is a tax incentive, it does not, and it's titled a zone, it does not in fact impact our zoning in any way or any other regulation. It is simply a tax incentive layer. It does not impact what we've decided to zone where or any of our other regulations. So you couldn't do a project on a piece of land that just because it's in the Opportunity Zone, it's still, all of our zoning regulations still apply, and this is just a financial incentive. That being said, though, it has been wildly successful in some communities in supporting multi-family housing, workforce housing, and mixed-use development. And then 2.0 is intended to have more incentive for adaptive reuse and historical rehabilitations, infill development, and industrial and commercial development. In terms of eligibility, so this is a competitive application process. There is not every census tract is eligible to even be considered as an opportunity zone. So the feds have set a basic threshold that you either need to be, you either need to have a poverty rate of at least 20% with a median family income that does not exceed 125% of the state median family income, or have a median family income that does not exceed 70% of the state. And so you can see that we have 4 tracts in the city of Eureka that meet this threshold. I simply, on this slide, wanted to highlight that 2 of our 4 tracts that we have that could be eligible meet both thresholds. So that'll come into play later when I talk about staff's recommendation and how we ranked our recommendation. So the application process. Each state gets to nominate its selection to the federal government. Within the state of California, the governor will be nominating and making the final selection, and he's using the GoBiz office to do the application process. So there are 2,469 eligible census tracts. including Eureka's 4, and the governor will choose a maximum of 618 to designate. So a competitive process, 25%. They're using an application process followed by a letter of support period to make their decisions. And this has all come about fairly quickly. While federally this came about through the One Big Beautiful Bill, the state took some time to figure out how they wanted to do it and really only launched the guidelines a month ago. So we are hustling to make this happen, bring this in front of you, and work with our community partners to get our application together. Part of the application process has you rank the preferences of the census tracts. And so while the state may not choose all of your tracts, they know which ones you would most like to have chosen. And then they're going to weigh the merits of the application for the census tract based on the alignment with regional and statewide economic development priorities, inclusion of housing element sites, zoning and other mechanisms that support development, and then community support and cooperation. So as a part of this, both for our application and for the letter of support process, we've been working with our community partners, the County of Humboldt. We've been reaching out to our other cities to see who's applying for what and discussing some regional letters. And then as staff has also been reaching out to some of our regional partners for support letters. And we also had our Economic Development Commission consider this item and provide a recommendation to you to support this, and then they will also be providing a letter of support for our application. Part of the application also wants to see the local government have an approval process for what we are requesting, which is why you have a resolution in front of you tonight. So here are the 4 tracks broken out and our recommendation. As a shorthand, I'm going to refer to them all by their last 5 numbers because otherwise the string of numbers is all the same and it gets kind of confusing when you just talk about numbers. So 500, 100, 400, and 800. And you can see generally where each of them are. I will pull up a map of each of them in more detail so we can discuss them when I go through why we chose what we chose. But generally this is what we're looking at. And so you've got our top recommendation here, 500. Then you've got second, 100. Then 400. And then we did not recommend 800 for inclusion, which is why it's grayed out. We'll go into more detail in a moment. So, Census Tract 100. This one includes downtown, Old Town, part of the Hinge area, and some neighborhoods, and a big portion of the waterfront, including the Balloon Tract. This is our number 1 choice, simply because it contains a huge amount of our developable land. And you all, I'm sure, are familiar with the vacant lots that are in this area and the underutilized lots that are in this area. It also has quite a few sites that are designated in our housing element and meets not one but both thresholds. You only need to meet one threshold, but it is a stronger case that it meets both thresholds. Guidance from the state has also said to exclude single-family development when possible, and this tract is almost exclusively multifamily zoned and commercial and industrial. And then we have Census Tract 500. This is in the northeastern part of the city, so it includes areas like Target. It includes other portions of downtown. It's everything that is east of H Street, which is the divider right here. So there is a little bit of single-family zoning down here, but most of this is R3, and then a lot of commercial development, some vacant and underutilized lots. And we think it's a strong candidate. It has more opportunity sites identified in the housing element. So it's a pretty strong candidate, and it also meets both the median family income threshold and the poverty threshold. And then looking at our third recommended inclusion is the 400 tract. This one includes a portion of South Broadway. I have on our left the city boundary so that you can compare it to the census tract boundary. The census tracts do not follow city boundaries. They're federal designations. So this census tract bops in and out of our city limits, which makes it a little less competitive simply because we don't have land use control over parts of the area, and our land use codes are supportive of the type of development we'd like to see in multifamily, so it makes a stronger case. The reason we decided to include this area, even though it does have portions in the county and some big single-family neighborhoods, is that it does contain this South Broadway area, and we think that there is some potential for development there, and it could use some support in getting that development off the ground. And then finally, the tract we decided not to apply for. However, it is at your discretion. So if you would like to reconsider this, I can support you in giving you detail on that information and decision making. So tract 800 is over here on the eastern part of the city. You can see Murrayfield, Jacobs Avenue, and Brainerd are within the city limits over here. But all of Myrtletown, which is mostly single-family residential, and then wide swaths of open land and the bay are also included in this census tract. So it weakens the case for them. And then when we were looking at really the development potential, Brainerd does have development potential, but there are the development potential of that site didn't outweigh the larger detractors for the site. And when the state is encouraging you to pick your best, so we decided to not apply for this one and favored the other three. So this is just an overview again of all four of those tracks and what the three that we decided to include on the basics of where each of them is. And we have a resolution before you to consider, which will be included as a part of the application. So I'm available for questions, and please let me know.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Councilmember Castellano, Ben Fernandez.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. When I first was elected, that was sort of around the time of Opportunity Zone 1.0, and I attended quite a few meetings on it because it seemed like potentially a good source of investment in the city, but as you said, nothing really panned out. And so I'm curious, should these get selected to become opportunity zones, how might we kind of capitalize on that? I can imagine some ways, like, kind of perhaps marketing this to people in specific sectors, but is that something you're thinking about yet?
It's a great question. It's worth considering. I don't think that we've had any collective conversations around how we would market it per se. I think it's a tool. It's going to take a little bit to really figure out, to test the new 2.0 and see what it looks like, and see, talking to folks who are interested in developing, how helpful it truly is for them. And I think once we have a stronger understanding of what this looks like in our community, then we can really start marketing it and having the conversations with the right folks who might be interested in pulling in some private equity and getting some projects done.
Thanks. And then I've been doing a little bit of reading on what they call climate resilience districts, which is a different kind, and we're not talking about that tonight, but there is some possibility that, should we establish a climate resilience district, which could be potentially like a partnership with the county or something like that, and that helps secure investment. And I could imagine, somewhat helping with like secure some of the climate action bonds or things like that. But have you looked at how, looked into those and whether those may pair with opportunity zones? We're sort of, we're maybe not quite there yet, but just curious if that's on.
It's funny that you ask. I didn't include it because we don't have any of these, but EIFDs and the climate resilience districts, you do actually score a point in the application if you have one of those within the census tract that you're applying for. The state does really see tying them together. So I don't think we as staff had really seen climate resilience districts before, but it came up in conversation, and I think it's worth discussing more. We're now kind of generally aware of what they are and what they do, and they're an interesting district.
Cool. Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you. You've actually answered a lot of my questions through the presentation, but I have a few, if you don't mind. Yeah, just a few. One of the earlier slides had said that there was a slow rollout with 1.0, and so I'm curious how the speed differs with this.
Well, now there's just the program didn't exist before, and so I think a lot of it, from my understanding of it, a lot of private equity was like, "What does this truly mean?" There was a lot of discussion among like the IRS and like tax lawyers and communities about how this truly how to interpret the policies that came about and what they meant for development. Now it's been 9 years. I think a lot more folks are now familiar with this tool and are looking at the new incentives. And so I think that there will be a shorter period where people readjust and see the opportunities and start looking at where they want to use this tool.
So less of what the hell is this and more like, okay, I think I have a better idea, and it may be a bit more permanent going forward.
Yes. So this will be in place for 10 years.
Okay.
So the designation will run from 2027 to 2037. And so at that time, I would imagine the feds will come back and do a 3.0. So I think people are now, they know what the toy is, and now it's just got the shiny new upgraded version that they can play with.
And then you had said that looking at the census tracts we have in California, we're going with about 25%, or the GoBiz office is. And so what's the timeline for application and decision?
The application period closes on the 25th of this month. And then there will be a public comment like letter of support period in August. And then there's a tight federal deadline, I believe, at the beginning of September for the state to submit its choices. And then the feds announce the final decisions, and then it goes into effect in January.
And do we know what kind of competition we're facing just within our region? Are there other applicants that you're aware of?
So there are other applicants within the region. We have been talking to a lot of our neighbors and seeing what who's thinking about what, and pursuing some regional letters of support from our state representatives, because we're all rowing in the same direction, and we believe in working together. This process doesn't necessarily pit us against each other. Okay. We're competing with the rest of the state and the census tracts throughout the state.
Because I guess I'm curious then, because the one that you had grayed out, of course, you were saying that doesn't fall quite within city limits, and that can lead to some confusion. But would there be any potential in the future then to collaborate with the county outside of that, or is there any mechanism to do that now, I guess?
So we have been collaborating with the county. We know what they're going to apply for. They're applying for some areas. Unless I looked, I think they were considering some areas around Eureka and, of course, McKinleyville. So we have been talking with them, and they would support us if we wanted to include it. I think we were thinking about being strategic and just including what was most competitive.
And then the last one I have, when we're talking about private equity or investors, businesses, making those investments within the census tracts, those dollars don't have to necessarily be with the businesses, or the investors themselves don't necessarily have to be within the census tract, but they have to be willing to invest in that census tract.
Correct.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer?
Hey, Sarah, I think you maybe answered this, but just for the public to understand, is there any negatives to us having a designation? I'm thinking of private property owners, right? Is there anything for them to be afraid of? Does it, are they protected from additional regulations? I guess the question is.
I don't think so. So, to answer your question at a couple different levels, this is an app. All staff needs to do is invest the staff time for this application, and then it's a 10-year designation. So from our perspective, there's very little time investment for what could be a lot of gain. In terms of, I think it can be scary to say the word development, and folks are like, what does that mean? Which is why I referenced it doesn't impact our regulations in any way. So our zoning code still applies everywhere, which is our primary tool to guide what kind of development we want to see where. So in this way, I don't think there is a downside for private property owners, because it's just a finance incentive tool that you can or cannot, you don't have to use it, but like you could choose to use it to make a project pencil out.
Thanks.
Any further questions at this time? Seeing none, we'll open this item up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public in chambers that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom. Do you see anybody on Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
So we will bring it back to council for a motion in a second and conversation. Councilmember Bauer.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution of the Eureka City Council supporting the nomination of census tracts in Eureka for Opportunity Zone 2.0 designation.
Second.
We have a second. Are there any further comments? Councilmember
Couple
Castellano?
comments. I just want to say, it seems like should we be granted these opportunity zones, even one of them, one of our next steps would be to kind of create a package of like what are properties that would make good investments and perhaps even kind of designate, maybe not formally, but like informal kind of like districts or sectors that we would like to sort of draw to the area. And then, the one thing I think is just a ongoing question or research project is like, what kind of investment do we want? And, is it people who already live here or people from out of the area? And how do we actually attract that to the community? So I'm excited about the possibility and hope that we are granted at least one so we can think about what might come after.
Further comments? Seeing none, please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. And this moves us to the transit occupancy tax with City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. At the June 16th council meeting, Council requested staff to bring back information related to a possible 2% increase in our transient occupancy tax, or what is commonly referred to as TOT. So staff looked into that because of the timing that would be required of getting this onto the ballot. We've put together not only a presentation on the TOT tax itself and what it would look like with a 2% increase, but also if council provides direction, there's an ability to adopt the resolutions and the ordinance necessary in order to do so. So currently right now, the TOT rate for the city of Eureka is 10%. On top of that, there's a 2% T-bid that the Humboldt Lodging Alliance has, self-imposed assessment on their own. The TOT is for all hotels and short-term rentals within the city of Eureka limits. That's not the case for all of our jurisdictions here locally. For comparison, currently Arcata and Fortuna have the same setup that we currently have now with a TOT rate of 10% with the 2% T-bid. The county in 2022 put on the ballot Measure J a 2% increase for theirs, so they are currently at 12% TOT with a 2% T-bid. There have been concerns expressed related to the TOT and the potential for deterring travelers for coming and staying in Eureka hotels. So staff reached out to the county to have a discussion about the differences in their revenue. I do need to point out a mistake in the agenda summary, which I will get into. But as I said, the TOT for Measure J for the county went in to the ballot in 2022. It passed. The tax went into effect in January of 2023. And so for comparison purposes to see what effect it had on the TOT and the amount of visitors that we had in town, we looked at the last complete fiscal year that was in place prior to the 2% increase for the county, which was fiscal year 21-22, which spanned from July of 2021 to June 30th of 2022. Their TOT rate at the time was 10%. They generated $3.7 million in revenue. Then we looked at the first complete fiscal year of the tax increase 2% being in place, which was fiscal year 23-24, which runs from June July of 2023 until June 30th of 2024. This is where the mistake was made. So when staff reached out to the county, they provided the revenues directly from their database. It didn't have the narrative component of their budget. During that fiscal year, they changed the way in which they identified accruals for the TOT tax. And so in your staff report, it says that the revenue generated for fiscal year 23-24 with the 12% TOT was $6.1 million. That is incorrect. The actual value, if they were to report that using the same accrual process that they did in fiscal year 21-22, would be $4.5 million. So the difference between fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 23-24 is approximately $1.8 million. It definitely is an increase. We reached out to their staff and asked them for that information, and then on top of that, we received something that came back and said that if the 2% wasn't in place, that 4.5 value would have dropped to about 4.25 million if it was still at 10%, which according to them still demonstrate that the passage of Measure J did not have an impact on the amount of tourism that they got in the county. Raising the TOT is solely for vacation rentals and hotel stays. It's not for other taxes like sales tax or anything like that. The finance department has estimated that this 2% increase within the city of Eureka limits would generate approximately $700,000 in increased revenue for the TOT. We also, after posting this, have been contacted by the administrative staff of both Fortuna and Arcata, and they have both requested our information for this in potential consideration for their councils to look at a similar increase in their TOT in both Fortuna and Arcata. We have generated the resolutions and the ordinance. If council directs staff to move forward with this, the resolutions would need to be adopted. There's 2 of them. And then this would serve as the introduction for the ordinance, and if approved, would end up going to adoption for you guys at the July 21st meeting.
No, if approved by the voters, it would come back in December.
No,
ordinance.
I know, but the adoption of the, oh, really? Oh, so we'd have to go introduction, then we don't come back and adopt it until after the vote?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Was that too confusing? So typically when we do an ordinance, we introduce, the next meeting we adopt it. This would serve as the introduction of that ordinance, and then pending the election, and if it was approved by the voters, then the adoption of that ordinance would come back in January of 2027, December of 2026. And that's all staff has. If there's any questions, we're available.
So just as a clarification, we'll adopt the resolutions first. Can you explain to me that procedure, please?
Yes,
Each
in the
individual?
recommendation, it says the order, I
Okay.
believe.
Great. Any questions, Councilmember Moulton?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that information, this report, and all the work that went into this. My question is about tourism and trends. I run a business in Old Town. I meet people from all over the country, and in fact all over the world every month. And I know we have some data. What do you see as far as trends in tourism rooted in Eureka? Like, is our occupancy going up or down over the last few years?
So for the city, it's really difficult. I can say that based on the TOT and that we've had over the past 5 to 6 fiscal years, it's seen an increase and a leveling off. We can't equate that into heads and beds because the average daily price, a lot of factors go into that. So it could be that the prices are going up because when they set them, most of the other hoteliers tend to set them in a similar manner. But if it goes up, they could be spending more in a hotel, but yet have less people in beds, and yet we'd still see more money in taxes, potentially.
So based on the taxes that are collected, it's hard to say, but I know we have like placer data, and we are looking at how many visitors are coming into town. Do you have an impression of trends based on that data?
Yes, since we've had that, when we look at events, we're seeing a significant increase in that. Last year, I believe our 4th of July had 22,000 in attendance, and we just got the numbers back for this, and we were over 25,000.
That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councilmember Contreras-Deloche?
Yeah, I was curious. I understand that kind of tracks how many people have come into the city, but have we talked with the Lodging Alliance or any of them to kind of have a better idea of people who are actually staying?
So we've had discussions with them. We haven't had specific discussions about, I think it fluctuates for all of them. I do know that in the meeting that we did have with representatives of the Lodging Alliance, they're not fans, which I'm sure you're going to hear today, of increasing the rate at which we tax folks. They're of the opinion that the way to increase revenue for TOT is to get more people to stay here, not necessarily raise the rate. We haven't gotten specific data from them saying where they're at. We definitely hear their opinions of what they think is going on, but we don't get data from them specifically for their occupancy.
If you've heard opinions, I realize that's anecdotal, about if they're seeing any increase or decrease in numbers, what was the opinion?
Like currently right now?
Yeah, you said they have given opinions about whether it was increasing or decreasing, whether or not they were seeing any differences in their numbers, and I was asking, what did they convey?
Decreases.
Yeah, okay. I had one other question. The numbers that we were provided, it didn't look like it included the numbers from the recently adopted budget by the county from 25-26 for their TOT. I just saw that it went through to like partway through 25, and I was just curious if we did still actually look at it, even though it's not included in here.
So the only ones that were included in the agenda summary were from 21-22 and 23-24. We didn't include 24 and 25. Some of the issues which this came from, so when I put this together, the CIO's office found out what we were coming up with numbers, and I was reached out to not only by the county's office but by representatives of the Lodging Alliance saying that this 6.1 number is different. And so that's when we found out about the way that they account for their accruals. It's not like running a business. It's a very odd way of doing things. They changed the way they do their accruals and had to go back and do their accruals the same way in order to compare apples to apples. And that's when we got that number. The same would have been said, so let's say we put in fiscal year 24-25 and did it, which isn't a part of this, but I know that the numbers are in the budget for them. They would have to go back and do that same adjustment because the way that they did accruals in 21-22 is different than what they've done from 23 and 24 on.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking is just, I was able to find data going from 2017 through 2024, and then on the county side, on their most recently adopted budget, I have the numbers going from 2021 all the way through to 25-26, and it looks considerably different as a trend than what we've been presented in our packet, and so it feels like that's important for the rest of the council to have.
That's exactly why staff pointed that out, because that was the one difference when you look at it, when you compare apples to apples. If they were to do the accruals the same way in 2023-24 that they did in 21-22, that number reflected there instead of being 6.1 or whatever it is, I think it's 5 point something there, would have been 4.5 million. And so we reached out to the county staff to get them to do it exactly the same way they did it in 2021 and 2021, 2022, And they did that for 22, 24, and that's the reflected numbers.
Yeah, I just, for the purposes of staff having that information, that is included in their most recently adopted budget at the county. And it shows a decline in the 24-25. It peaks in 23-24, and then it immediately begins to drop again. And then it declines again, 25-26, all the way back down to 2.3, which is even lower than 21-22. And I think that's important for us to be able to consider that as well as part of this.
I will say that accrual was different in 23 and 24-25 and 25-26. The accruals weren't accounted for in there, and the final quarter was not adjusted for that either.
Yeah, there's actually a little narrative in there too by their director Alicia Hayes talking about that this is an indicator.
And I will say that
of recession.
The COA's office did say that it's very clear that the 2% increase did not have an impact on their revenue from TOT.
That's true. It's declining.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano?
Thanks. I'll get into more thoughts later. According to kind of national research, raising the TOT doesn't have any, effects on individual stays, though it does sometimes affect group stays. That's where they see the difference because, people who are ordering like blocks of rooms and are like, oh, that makes a difference. I've read, that a lot of hoteliers then like address that by offering like group discounts or things like that. But I've also heard that there's some information available of like, especially for government stays, that tax could be negotiated or there's processes of getting waivers for the tax. Could you speak more about that?
Yes, we've had folks from out of the country come to stay, and we have a form that they can fill out, and then the TOT, the hotelier, can waive that fee. And some governments will reach out and like agencies to have that same consideration for TOTs so that government employees can stay here locally, or group rates will be in effect, and it won't be as expensive for their per diem that they receive from federal and state.
Great, and that's something we could work with the Lodging Alliance and the hoteliers on, helping making that more accessible for those kinds of tax reductions or things like that. I think those are my only questions.
Is that it? Councilmember Fernandez?
I know in our conversation you were saying it was difficult to get like the year over year of, I think as Councilmember Moulton put it, was, heads to beds, that type of situation. But looking in, let's see, what was it? Our agenda summary, what is it that we've brought in then over the last few fiscal years? Because I know we included the county in here, but I'm not seeing ours.
I will. Can you go to the next question while I bring this up? I apologize.
To the chair.
Councilmember. Yes. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I just want to say there is some data from Visit California that Humboldt County has seen a 3.4% growth in tourism, which is twice the state average, and that's in the period since the TOT increased. That's not, again, it's different than the county's data, but it may just help people's questions in the conversation.
Thank you. Councilmember Contreras-Deloge?
Yeah, can I ask an additional question? When it's saying tourism, what is it talking about? Is it talking about hotel stays, or how is that broken out?
It's larger than that, but it does, center hotel stays as one of the key drivers.
And it's showing that there's an increase in hotel stays for the county?
I believe so. I don't have the report open right now. I just know that there's been a 3.4% increase in tourism.
Yeah. Okay. I did have one other question, and I was wondering what the city's projection is that this 2% increase might net us.
Right. It's in the staff report. It's $700,000 for 2%. It's approximation.
Yeah. I want to make sure everybody hears. Thank you.
This question might better go to City Attorney Black, and I'm curious, or even City Clerk. Is there anything that would prevent us from breaking this total up over two fiscal years, 1% this next fiscal year, 1% after that? Or would it have to come back again? I'm just unclear on the process for that, or if we would be able to do something like that tonight.
I believe you would be able to do something like that tonight.
Okay.
It's a question of the crafting of the wording.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the voters know how they're taxing themselves or taxing
the outsiders.
the transients, the outsiders. As long as it's clear in the language of the ballot measure, I think it could be supported.
So I can answer that other question that was asked previously. So we'll go back to fiscal year 2016, 2017, and then go from there. So that'll be the last 10 years. 2017 was 2.978 million. 2018, fiscal year 2017, 2018 was 2.981. 2018, 2019 was 2.815. 2019, 2020 was 2.12. 2020, 2021 was 3.284. 21, 22 is 3.451. 22, 23 is 3.298. 23, 24 is 3.233. 24, 25 is 3.390. And as of now, which is probably short because we haven't had it all back yet, and 26, and as of January, is 3.551.
Do you have a follow-up?
It's less a follow-up, but then you could say that there has been an upward trend since 2016. Granted, there may be a little bit of a divot there.
There was COVID, the initial part of COVID, there was a big decrease, but after that, after COVID, there was a significant increase, and pretty much the whole time increases since.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Member Bauer.
And just real quick, I mean, I think this is an important part of this discussion. What will we do with the money, given our current kind of budget situation?
So the way we've crafted this is very similar to how we crafted Measure H, and we would use it for those services, which are very similar to Measure H, that have impacts from tourism. So whether that's roads, whether that's police services, whether that's parks, those things that are utilized by those people visiting our town.
So public safety, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez?
And so then for further clarity, that goes into the general fund, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything further? Seeing none, we will open this item up for public comment. If you came to comment on this item, please line up on either side of the room, and we'll have you come on up. Welcome. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Damian Bradley from Eureka.
Hi, Damian.
Hi. So I wanted to say I feel like a good investment of those extra funds would be like to complete the bike trail in between Arcata and Eureka. And so that's what I think that would be to make the bike trails more accessible to people when they come here. That would attract more tourists, make it easier for people to get around if they want to do something alternative from driving their car. It would give them a nice bike ride, with the bike trail on the bay. And another thing, I kind of had, it was a little off topic, but I was just wondering if there's a start date for the offshore wind project.
So that would be something you could email us about, and we could certainly talk to you about that. But yeah, that doesn't apply to this item.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Come on up. You're welcome. Way up there.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Well, this came on pretty quickly for us. So good evening, City Council and Mayor, and the Honorable City Manager Miles Slatery. Everyone, Miles Slatery. My name is Chris Ambrosini, and I'm the managing partner of the Best Western Plus Humboldt Bay Inn here in Eureka at 5th and Broadway. I know that there are many challenges and decisions that you face, and this is one of them. In my mind, the way you're going to raise TOT revenue is not by raising the tax percentage itself, but instead raise the revenue by creating more overnight visitors to stay in Eureka. Eureka already enjoys the highest occupancies and TOT revenues in the county, so why take a chance and upset that? If you raise the tax, price-sensitive visitors, and believe me, they are there in today's environment, large groups that was mentioned, and business travel, especially business travel, that take a look at the total price of their room, may choose to stay in other nearby communities such as Arcata or Fortuna, where the tax is currently only 10%. And then you add the 2% on the T-bid. So it's 12% for all three cities right now. If this happens, it will not only affect hotels and TOT revenues, but also other businesses such as restaurants, retail, and local attractions like the Redwood Skywalk and the Madaket, just to name a few. You see, raising the tax can have the opposite effect. You may see an overall decrease in TOT revenue. My solution again is to create more overnight visitors to stay in Eureka. How can we do this? I know that Visit Eureka and your staff are doing a really great job on promoting Eureka right now. I see it all over social media, especially in the last year or so. You guys have done an excellent job. But now it's time to team up with Eureka Lodging Alliance. We have the funds to help, and really take our efforts to the next level is the answer. Let's work together and create an ongoing, robust marketing campaign, create and foster new events, and come up with the next major attraction here in Eureka, like the Redwood Skywalk. By growing occupancy in Eureka hotels, more overnight visitors, whether it's tourist or business travel, that's what's going to increase the overall TOT revenues. It's a win-win for everyone. The city, the hotels, restaurants, retail, I mean everyone. Let's make sure that
Thank you,
Eureka
Chris.
captures...
Your time's up.
Oh, I still have like 4 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Are you sure?
You're done. Thank
All
you for
right.
being here. We appreciate that.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You betcha. Come on up. Oh. Sorry, that's really noisy. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Patel from the Home 2 Suites, Eureka. Councilmember Contreras, thank you for sharing that data from the county that I shared with all the counselors earlier today. I did have discussions with Miles regarding those county numbers, and Miles is correct. The TOT did increase in 23-24, but that was coming out of COVID. Revenues were increasing for all area hotels, or for the state, and for the whole state for that matter. But if we look at fiscal year 25-26, the 3 quarters which are reported in the county's current budget, they've only collected $2.3 million, and so that's about $800,000 per quarter. And if we assume they're going to collect, say, another $900,000 in this quarter that just ended, that would be below what they collected in 21 and 22 before Measure J. So I know Miles has been trying to spin this quite a ways, and I'm the reason the whole accrual issue came up, because I noticed that in this budget. So just want you guys to be aware, just because you raise the tax, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to collect $700,000. And I don't know if that's with accruals, Miles, or without. And then in addition, I looked at our other neighboring cities, which are comparable, what their taxes were. For example, Ukiah, they have a 10% TOT and 1% T-bid. Reading is 10% and 2% T-bid. Chico, 10 and 2.2. Red Bluff, 10%. Oroville, 9 and 2.2. Yuba City, 10 and 0.2. So when you get to a 14% tax all in with T-bid, you're rivaling larger cities with convention centers and a lot of offerings that aren't necessarily here in Eureka, which I think will give visitors to Eureka the perception that this city is very expensive. We already have some of the highest gas in the country, definitely the state, and people may not look at their, the tax rate when they're booking, because everybody's just looking at the price. But when they get that bill at the end, they're definitely going to tell their family and friends, like, man, Eureka's really expensive, and they didn't really have much to offer other than, just the Redwoods or just a normal hotel stay. So I caution you to, really think about this TOT increase, that you may not get the 700,000 Miles is projecting. And there was a question about have our hotel occupancies declining. I looked at my data that we get each month, and for calendar year 2025, it looks like the market was down about 1% as a whole, all hoteliers. So revenues aren't significantly increasing in this area. So I think it's a bad time to raise taxes.
Thank you. Come on up. Welcome.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
My name is Shailesh Patel from the Holiday Inn Express. I've been in the hotel business here in Eureka for 50 years. I've seen the ups and downs. Lumber industry gone, fishing gone, marijuana now gone. And I think the city needs to look at alternates instead of just raising taxes, because I'm pretty sure we'll be in the same position next year. Best example I can give is like our gas prices are second highest in the nation. Very negative to have a reputation like that for a small town. Before voting on this tonight, I would urge you to just get on Google, spend 2 minutes. The best example I can give you is Las Vegas, the biggest tourist town perhaps in America. And with their high resort fees, $15 water to $20, you can read that they outpriced themselves, and it became very negative. And their occupancies have dropped tremendous amount, revenues huge amount. I don't think we want to be in a position for a small town to say that we're the highest gas prices, highest occupancy taxes. That's not a great thing for visitors. As you can see, that what we offer to the pricing we're charging, we want to be competitive. We don't want to lose this business perhaps to the tribal casino hotels, which pay no taxes. And they could simply come out and say, come and stay here, and we won't charge you any. What would happen then? So I urge you strongly to look at what I just said. It's on Google. You will see how negative it became. Once this publicity becomes that this town is very expensive, yeah, I think we would take a downturn. Instead of going up, it would be a disaster. As you can see, what I said, from lumber, fishing, marijuana, some of the decisions made have led us into some of these items. And in the future, I think just like yourself, your personal finances, I don't think you run a deficit. So it would be better that we look at alternates, because sooner or later, this position will show up again and again. And I don't think there's enough taxes that you could raise at a certain point, and the pyramid scheme will come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Shailesh. Come on up. Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Nasa. I've been in the hotel business for 48 years at the Townhouse Motel. Raising the TOT is not the solution to increasing revenue for the city. I've seen the city decline in many areas over the years, and the complaints from tourists is increasing more and more every year. Common complaints are the homeless, and the city feeling unsafe and it's been too expensive with not enough to do. As it is, Eureka is already losing tourism business to cities like Arcata and Fortuna, who have a reputation of being more cleaner and have less problems with safety. These cities would be more attractive with a 10% TOT, and thus making Eureka less attractive and more costly. It just doesn't make sense. The city needs to focus rather on cleaning up and growing the idea to be more attractive for tourists rather than trying to find ways to charge them more for tax. We still have a long ways to go before the city of Eureka is deserving of a 12% TOT. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alpesh Natha. Oh.
You're tall too. There you go.
All right. So, and I represent the Ramada Bayside Inn and the Super 8 in Eureka. My family's been in the business for almost 50 years in Eureka. We feel raising the TOT to 12% is probably one of the worst ideas for the city of Eureka. Our demographics and our offerings of the area definitely don't match up to some of the other cities in California who do have a 12% or even less of a TOT. Cities like San Jose, they have a 12% TOT. They're home to the Silicon Valley, where the population of the metropolitan area is roughly about 2 million people. And their offerings are an abundance of tech business, tourists coming for various sporting events. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of things for tourists to do, all of which we don't have in the area currently. Another great example is San Diego, which they have a 10.75% TOT. And their metropolitan area has a population of 3.3 million residents. And they have amazing tourist offerings like the world-renowned zoo, the 1,200-acre Balboa Park, USS Midway Museum. I could go on and on. Then you compare Eureka, where our population is barely 25,000 people. And we could probably count on two hands the things that we tell tourists to do when they come to the area. Raising TOT just makes us look less and less attractive by charging a premium tax for a subpar experience when gas prices are already one of the highest in the states. My humble request is that you think about this from the hotelier's perspective, where this will definitely be a decline in revenue, in our opinion, for all of us, including the city of Eureka. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Good evening. Welcome.
My name is Troy Ritchie. I'm the GM at the Carter House. I've only 4.5 years running a hotel, so I'll not claim to be full knowledgeable of everything that goes on here in the industry. But I thought that a 2-week period for all of us to examine what's going on is a very quick turnaround. And I can speak to my last 3 days of whatever the holiday was, because we don't really have those. We just continue on as the industry goes. My point is that it was a quick turnaround for us to make a quick decision. And I don't know if the research is telling us everything we need to know to make a good and thoughtful decision over a longer period of time, because I don't think there's an end date in this taxation anytime soon. The biggest concern I have is we're already looking at the taxes we have. There is a downward force on us to absorb that tax as hoteliers. So the rate we can get is X. We subtract that tax out because we want to get X, but we have to subtract it out to get that guest to come in the door. Whether I'm at the Carter House or something else, it doesn't matter. The math is the same. There is a portion that the hotels are absorbing just to make it work. And when you start adjusting for inflation, the numbers don't add up. We're flat. We've been flat. And I don't really agree with that number of we're just trying to find a way to get us out of this budgetary situation. I had to watch 5 hours of YouTube just to find where TOT came into this conversation. And I was surprised that Lane didn't say anything during his whole discussion about budget, but we're $4 million in the hole, and now we're looking for $700,000. That's all I have.
Thanks for being here. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Miles. I hate to say this, but I've been here for 50 years doing this. I don't even want to think about it. In fact, I was standing in this exact spot about 40 years ago, and it was discussed raising our taxes from 6% to 7%. And then it went to 8%. And then it went to 9%. And then it went to 10%. And now with your proposal and T-bid, it'll be 14%. Okay, we got to draw the line somewhere. I'm sorry. If government was run like a business, it would have probably been fired by now. Like teenagers, the more you give the government, the more they're going to spend. The secret is to teach discipline, okay? We can't solve our problems just by throwing money at them. It's lazy, unproductive, and harmful. I think, or we think of the 2% tax increases, you would think of a 20% staff cut, to give you perspective on what we think of it. I can tell you one thing for certain, though, of all the years, you increase profits with more tourists, okay, not more costs. And tourists do look at the bottom line, and they look at it, was that their number, and then was that a valuable value, I guess I would say. And, you know, this is just another stake in the heart of a bright future we could have. And I ask you not to raise the taxes on hotels and don't harm our tourist industry. That would be my... Oh, and we did last time, I remember discussion, don't quote me, but when we looked the numbers, tourists pay more in taxes than locals do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Meredith Matthews. I'm representing. Goodness,
Sorry, I'm putting down
doesn't
for
do
you
that
a
in
little bit.
Arcata.
You're good now. You're good.
Representing the Eureka Lodging Alliance tonight. I have, unlike these gentlemen, only been in this business for about 9 months now, but I do urge you to listen to these people that have been in this business for decades, cumulatively so much experience in hotels. I will read as much of this as I can. So on behalf of the Eureka Lodging Alliance, we appreciate, and I do appreciate, the difficult financial decisions facing your city. We recognize the responsibility you have to maintain essential city services while addressing increasing operational costs. And we also share your commitment to building a strong, vibrant community. And for this reason, we respectfully oppose an increase to the TOT. Tourism, of course, is one of Eureka's most important economic drivers. The city's own adopted budget recognizes tourism as one of the industries that has helped diversify Eureka's economy and continues to support local businesses, employment, and municipal revenues. The success of our hotels directly impacts the success of our community. Every visitor that stays overnight also eats in our restaurants, shops in our stores, visits local attractions, purchases fuels, which is really expensive right now, attends events, and support countless of small businesses throughout Eureka. A reduction in overnight visitation does not simply affect hotels, it affects our entire local economy. Under the proposed increase, visitors staying in Eureka hotels would pay a combined 14% lodging assessment, including the 2% T-bid. This would make Eureka one of the highest taxed lodging markets in Northern California. By comparison, as my colleagues have said, many neighboring and competing destinations, including Redding, Chico, Santa Rosa, Crescent City, and numerous other North State communities, currently assess lodging at 10% or less. And visitors do have choices. As travel costs continue to rise, visitors are increasingly sensitive to the overall cost of their trip. Eureka already faces competitive challenges, including distance from major metropolitan markets and some of the highest fuel prices in California. We do believe there's a better path forward, and the Eureka Lodging Alliance, we all stand ready to work with the city to work together to create a robust, vibrant economic drivers and help you build attractions, help you plan events. So please take this into consideration. And again, I really appreciate all you do and a very difficult decision that you have, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Meredith. Hi, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. I came in a little bit late. I apologize for that. And I did have a sort of like off-subject question, or if it should wait till the third Tuesday, that's okay.
Yeah, so this item we're discussing right now is the TOT tax.
Okay.
So if you have an item that is not related to that, then it probably would best to contact us individually or come to the next meeting and have
Okay,
a conversation.
I will. No worries. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, is there anyone else in chambers who'd care to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take it over to Zoom.
I see no one on Zoom.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for a motion, a second, and comments. Councilmember Castellano.
Okay. Do I need to read the whole motion? I'm happy to. Okay. I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? Councilmember Castellano.
Great. Yeah, I do want to share my comments, and I am thankful to the work of the hoteliers who are here in this room, and really appreciate and admire the ways that you support this community. And as you know, and I've definitely spoken to some of you, we are in a difficult, we have to make difficult decisions in terms of, really looking at what's best for the citizens here. We are looking at, let's say an average hotel stay in the city of Eureka is $160. We're looking at an increase of about $3.20 a night. I do think my coffee probably went up that much in the last 3 years. I drink lattes, it's true. But I think most travelers are able to absorb those increases in hotel costs, when they're planning their trips. And I do apologize for the quick turnaround on this. As you know, we did have the timeline of kind of needing to bring it forward quickly in order to get it on this year's ballot. I do want to reassure folks that these aren't the only measures we're taking to, address economic vitality in the city of Eureka. We're taking many more and really looking at a robust plan to continue to make sure that our city's thriving. And some of those solutions are, really kind of analyzing opportunities for insurance, for, tracking overtime, for investing in economic development, things like continuing the facade improvement programs and things like that would be made possible by potentially, by this increase. It is a general tax, and so those things will be decided by future council members. But this money will allow us to really consider economic development. I do think, should this pass, we do need to look at, things that also support tourism, like increased marketing, increase just like cleanups and cleanliness in the Old Town and downtown area. I know that's something that does affect visitor stays. And so I want us to continue to, really see that we're working in partnership. I completely understand your frustration and lack of support on this particular item. And I think that this does not mean that we are ultimately working in partnership for the good of the tourist experience here in Humboldt County, and it's especially in Eureka, and for the good of all citizens who live here. And I think this is a real win-win, ultimately. And I just appreciate you all coming out tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
I'm appreciative of the feedback from the lodging community, and to Councilmember Castellano's point that, there is a lot that goes into the taxes and the programs and the services that the city provide. At the same time, just looking at what we are nationwide and even locally, it can't be denied that there's an economic decline. And so I would, at least in accepting the fact that, yeah, we do need funds to pay for city services, we do need it to pay for city programs, I would then propose that we... what's the phrase I'm looking for? I was just asking about it earlier. Sorry.
I think what looking is to what you've discussed with me is looking into spreading it out over 2 years.
Yeah.
And looking at a 1% increase that would become effective January of 2027, and then a second 1% increase that would become effective January 2028.
And so that would be my motion to amend that, is that we break this up for a period of 2 years, over a period of 2 years.
Councilmember Castellano?
I just have a question whether that's possible to do via ballot initiative.
It is, and staff has actually drafted some language around what that would change the question to look like, if council wants to consider that.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloach.
If you guys were still trying to go down that stream of thought and resolve that, I can wait.
Okay. So back to you. Councilmember Moulton.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that we're talking about one ballot measure that breaks the increase up into 2 increments rather than 2 separate ballot measures.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the reason I put that forward is that it gives us time to look at our own finances. It gives the industry to judge the impact and look at what they need to do over the course of the next 2 years, rather than just have to embrace it within the next 6 months, potentially.
Okay, so we're looking for Well, so we need the motion maker to agree, right?
Well, I would prefer at this point that someone would make a substitute motion and the other person would second that. You know, I'm fine with the motion I made personally, but you know, just in terms of like the public discourse, I wouldn't obstruct that motion if that, you know.
Well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I was making a substitute motion. I think I had said amend.
Thank
so
you for that clarification, Councilmember Fernandez. Do we have a second on Councilmember Fernandez substitute motion? Okay. It looks like no. Councilmember Contreras-Deloach?
I knew that this was going to pass, but I do think that, you know, I agree with some of the commenters. The answer when you are in a recession or there's a contraction or whatever language we want to use is not to increase costs. And there are just as, you know, I been researching this, there's just as many articles and data saying it does impact as there are saying it doesn't. And so, you know, it's one of those situations that's kind of difficult to suss out, like really what it does, that raising it can, you know, have that effect. But I think we all know that raising costs of any kind ultimately do have an impact on how people spend their money. It does have an impact. You know, one of the things that I was reading was that smaller hoteliers in particular, I don't know if I just said that word correctly, felt fancy, but smaller ones in particular are more likely to eat any increase to try to stay competitive with larger chains that can discount rooms or other people are buying bulk rooms. And so there is these kind of disproportionate impacts when there are smaller businesses versus larger businesses. And I think that's something to consider. Something else that, you know, I'd like to consider is how many people that are in our area come. We just got 2 new doctors. We got a new dermatologist. How many people stay in hotels for a while before they can find housing? How many poor people are put in hotels or stay in hotels until their money runs out each month? So we're just passing that on to them as too. So I'm just want to point that out as well, to people who we want to come and stay and make life, but we're also passing that cost along to people who are renting motels and that kind of thing for the evening because they have no place to live. And my understanding off of our last, I don't know if Director Asbury's here, but maybe City Manager Slattery can answer it. Tourism was half, right? About half of our economy is tourism. What was it?
No,
I'm trying to remember. Can you guys remind me what it was?
No, it is approximately, if you look at the numbers that I just provided, if we get off last year's numbers, which I think was 3.8, it's less than 10%.
It's less than 10. Okay, so it's pretty small. Okay, I'm not sure why I got that in my head. Anyway, I just, you know, this extreme price sensitivity I think is a thing, but I think also too, you know, we should be pursuing, I think, aggressively making sure that the current TOT taxes are paid before we're raising them on other people. I think that would be a smarter, wiser, immediate move.
Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you. Let's see. Sorry, my computer shut down and took my notes with it. I do wish that this didn't coincide, or the potential for this ballot didn't coincide with the charter amendment vote, because people are going to conflate this. People are going to confuse this, thinking that we want to raise the taxes on transient occupancy in order to pay for the additional costs in the charter amendment, when one is an order of magnitude outsized from the other. They are not connected. That's not why we were talking about this. But when we're talking about increasing tourism, I am incredibly disappointed to hear people whose profession is rooted in getting people to come to Humboldt, to come to Eureka, to appreciate Eureka, and to stand here and call this experience subpar, to describe Eureka as mid, is to undervalue what we have. To put us up against some of the towns that are charging 5%, 3%, 2%, 1% hotel taxes is comparing us to non-tourist destinations. We are a tourist destination. We get tourists from all over the world. Like I mentioned earlier, I meet somebody at least once a month from a different country who is here to see our world-class destination at the Skywalk, which the Humboldt Lodging Alliance did help pay for, and we're very grateful for that. But there's a lot more potential that could be had. There's a lot of great things about Humboldt County and a lot of great things about Eureka that happen in the middle of the summer when the hotels are already full. And I think that if we want to be providing a higher quality experience, we could be using this money to make Eureka cleaner, to make Eureka safer, to improve our public transportation, to improve our walkability, to improve our art and culture events that are already happening, to help make what's already going on, what's already drawing people from all over the world to Humboldt better and safer and more appealing, rather than trying to stretch out into the shoulder months. Why not go with what Humboldt has that works and put more money into that? And to that end, I think that the city of Eureka could do a really good job with this money to improve the experience of visitors. And ultimately, I just want to point out that we are not making this decision. We are asking the voters to make this decision.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bauer?
I don't have a lot to say. I mean, those are great comments, and you all spoke to what I was thinking. I mean, just like a business, city of Eureka, our costs are going up, and people expect the fire department to show up on time. They expect the police to show up, be there when they're in crisis, and those things cost money. We have fuel. We experience the fuel crisis like everybody else does, the fuel costs. We experience all these additional costs. And if we want a city to run like a business, we have to do things that allow us to have a better budget. And it's one of those unfortunate things. But like Councilmember Moulton said about, the voters will decide. We're just offering it up that here's a solution that might help us through tough budget times. And it doesn't affect our citizens, which we understand, we pay high taxes, and, that we don't want to increase that upon our citizens because we are a disadvantaged community. So this is a solution that helps us bridge a gap when it comes to our budget. And if the voters decide against it, that's fine. But these are the tough decisions that we have to make to run a vibrant city that has a lot of things to offer. We're the only place in the world that has redwoods. The only place, California, so people are going to come. And is this going to prevent them from coming? I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I hope the voters understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain services, public safety, improve our trails, and make it a destination, make an even stronger destination. And we can do that together. It's just that, budgets are tough and we've been flat. And so we need additional funds to have an effectively run city that can provide the services we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have your hand up? Councilmember Contreras-Deloge.
Yeah, I appreciate the thoughts, Councilmember Bauer. I am wondering, when Measure H was passed, it was similarly, it was billed as, for public safety and for roads. I'm sorry. What, Mayor?
I said it was for roads primarily, and that's what it.
I'm just going back
to.
and reading what was posted.
Okay.
What was posted
Sure.
and what was on the ballot. And so my question was going to be with this. I'm not personally, if you're going to pass this or put it to the voters for them to decide. I'm wondering if you would entertain us not having that go into the general fund, but rather having it that it has to be dedicated to public safety, which would include CARE, CSED, et cetera.
No, specific taxes require a higher voter threshold to pass.
What's the difference? Do you know?
66% plus
Two-thirds.
1.
2/3 versus
50.
Versus
50 plus 1. So if you want something to go into a special fund,
I
it has
understand.
a higher threshold, yeah.
I see. Okay. So the concern is that it wouldn't pass at that 2/3 threshold.
I think it's smarter for a city to be able to have flexibility in how to spend the money, because some years it may make more sense to perhaps invest in economic development or parks, and some years it may make more sense to invest in policing, depending what the needs of the city are.
Is it, I need to look at this again. Are we going to work on the language in a future meeting, or are we working on the language right now of what's going to go on the ballot?
What's in your agenda packet is what would go on the ballot.
Okay.
Based on the current motion.
Right. Could we, and I can't see for Beans brought wrong glasses, could we have somebody read that portion into the record of what it's going to say on the ballot?
Yes, I can read that. To maintain police, fire, 911 emergency medical response, street repair, road safety, parks and recreation, community health and mental health services, local business and economic development, and other essential services impacted by tourism, shall an ordinance increasing the city of Eureka's existing hotel tax by 2%, paid only by guests of hotels and short-term vacation rentals, be adopted until ended by voters, providing approximately $700,000 annually with independent financial audits and oversight by the city's Finance Advisory Committee.
Thank you, City Manager.
Okay, are there any further comments? Okay, well, before we vote, I too just want to make a comment. I don't have a vote, but I too, sitting up here this evening, felt very disappointed to hear people that should be supporting bringing people here talking so negatively about this beautiful city we live in. Unfortunately, that is part of the problem. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. It's very disappointing to hear that from people that allegedly want people to come here. So with that, please vote.
Three yes votes. Councilmember Fernandez and Councilmember Contreras Deloche vote no. Motion carries.
Okay, and at this point, we're going to take a 6 or 7 minute break. Is the Belay Co-Foundation donation with City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and Council. I'm very happy to report on this item here. It's been in the works for a very long time. As far as the project itself, I'll get in more in depth in the background of the project itself, but over about the past 8 months, our staff, mainly Social Services Manager Jeff Davis, has been in coordination with the Belay Foundation. The Belay Foundation is out of Santa Barbara, California. It is a foundation that does philanthropic efforts related to food security and housing the homeless, and they have funded other nonprofits up and down the state in order to develop housing. Our staff developed a relationship with them, ended up putting together a proposal that we had made in the past related to building a shelter space, 40 units on 2nd and A Street. It's 16 2nd Street is the address of the property. We had sought after 2 separate grant opportunities to do this project previously and have sought out another donor opportunity for this project as well until we came across the Belay Foundation. Over the past month or so, we developed a presentation for their board and were successful in getting offered a donation of $2.875 million to make this project a reality. And so we are here in front of council asking that you guys accept that donation to go towards the purchase of the property, the purchase of the modular units for the property, and the development of the property to get it prepared for construction. I have available for any questions.
Questions for City Manager Slattery on this item? Seeing none, we'll open this item up for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this item? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council for a motion and a second and comments.
I'll move staff
Councilmember Moulton?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll move the staff recommendation here.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Councilmember Contreras-Deloge?
Here we are 8-9 weeks after we talked about this, and so I'm grateful for staff and grateful for all the work that's gone into it, and here we go, and let's keep going.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano?
Similarly, thank you. This is very exciting. And, you know, it's taken some time to find a funder to support these initiatives, and it'd be great for our community.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. This moves us to 16 2nd Street acquisition with City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor, and a good evening again, Mayor and Council. Just to give a little more background on this, this project for the development of the shelter has been a conceived option for the city since 2023. At the time, the previous property owner, we were in discussions with them about acquiring the property. At the last minute, that property owner said that they are willing to sell it. However, they wanted to meet a certain time frame in order to achieve some tax benefits. The city couldn't honor those time frames with the process that we had to go through in order to secure the property as a city. So staff reached out to the Betty Quan Chin Foundation. Thanks to our partnership with them, their board, and Betty, they agreed to purchase the property with the first right of refusal to sell the property to the city once we had funding in place in order to move forward with the project. So they purchased it back in 2023. They bought it for, I believe, $300,000 or $320,000. They've had to pay property taxes and other things to maintain the property since then, and so they've put in about $370,000 over the time that they purchased the property in order to keep that property. And so once we received the generous offer from the Blanco Foundation, we went back to the board. The board approved the sale of the property to the city. So we are in front of council now requesting that you allow to use Blanco funding to purchase that property. Also, as a part of this, not only using the Blanco money to purchase the property, but also the desire of the Blanco Foundation to ensure that this property is used for affordable/interim housing for the next 50 years, similar to what we're doing with our affordable housing. As a part of this process, it would be on not only for the acquisition of the property, but also for to have staff, once acquiring the property, put a 50-year deed restriction that ensures that this property is used for affordable interim housing for the next 50 years. The CEQA analysis was previously done for the acquisition of the property because we had a grant for this project out, and we had done that previously for that. There will be another CEQA process when we get into the development of them, but it'll likely be an exemption. So with that, staff is available for any questions.
Any questions for City Manager Slattery? Councilmember Castellano?
It's probably a little early on this, but folks have been asking me in terms of, I know that this is, part of a project we're working on in order, to support housing. Do we already have ideas about how this will be managed and, and things like that? And could you share a little bit about that?
Yes, we have spoke with Betty and the Betty Quan Chin Foundation Board. Betty is very interested in this. She is interested in addressing those community members in the 3rd and commercial / 2nd and commercial area there, and that would be the intent. There's not going to be a requirement for that, but that is a desire of Betty's. The funding that is associated with this gives us the leeway to allow her to operate it similarly to how she operates the Blue Angel Village, which is a a program that she's accustomed to. She wasn't accustomed to some of the state requirements that we had with the other funding. But yes, the Betty Quan Chin Foundation and their staff would be operating this, obviously with the supportive services. When we did the presentation to the Beleco Foundation, we very much treated this like our Bayside Village, which you'll be receiving a report on later, that we provide the same social services programming and supportive services that we do at Bayside. So we will have staff from Uplift providing, whether it's job skills training or pathway to payday, or transitioning them into rental properties with housing support programs and those type of things. That will still be provided by our staff.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, seeing no one, is there anyone here from the public who would like to comment on this item? Come on up. Welcome again. Oh, you need to press the microphone so the green button comes on? Down low. No, right. You got it there?
Yeah, so I'm glad to see that there's a replacement for the Bayside Village, which just recently had to close down. And I wanted to say that this is a really good thing. And I was going to say that this will be a good thing that'll probably create a lot of jobs in the enhanced care management and looking out for people that are have housing insecurities, and is something that will greatly help Eureka, improve. So that's what I have to say. Glad to hear about it.
Thank you, Damien. And just so you know, Damien, as a point of clarification, at the end of the meeting during city manager reports, we are going to have an update on Bayside Village. So it actually hasn't closed. So if you stick around, you'll hear more about that as well.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, do you see anybody on Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
It's a Zoom-free evening. All right, well, we will bring it back to council for a motion in a second. Councilmember Fernandez?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there are any further comments? Seeing none, please vote.
I'm sorry. Could you please tell me who motioned? I missed it.
Fernandez, Bauer.
Thank you. It's okay. Pam and I were talking.
Okay.
I have yes votes. Motion carries.
And I just want to say, sorry, Mayor, I just really want to thank Amy and Scott and the Beleco Foundation for this generous donation. It's the first time that they've donated directly to a municipality, and they've really recognized the support of our elected officials for the social services programming and how we really reflect their goals and missions of their foundation. So thank you to the Beleco Foundation.
And thanks
Big
to Jeff
thank you.
Davis. Hey, Jeff Davis, thank you.
Yeah, we have Jeff Davis in the back of the room. Jeff, stand, wave. Hello. Yay.
Are we sure we're online?
We're online. Okay.
Okay.
Exactly right. So this takes us to the Housing Element Update Project Kickoff and Community Engagement with Director Kenyon. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I also want to introduce you to our newest senior planner, Kelsey Flederick, who is
welcome, Kelsey,
helping us with this massive undertaking. So, can I get the clicker? Oh, wrong PowerPoint. Okay. And then Kelsey also brought some stickers for you guys. There we go. Okay. So, what is a housing element? It's a city's long-range plan for addressing housing needs. It establishes the city's housing-related priorities, policies, and programs. State law requires that the city and all Humboldt County jurisdictions update their housing elements on an 8-year cycle. We're all in the same cycle, which the current one ends in around July 2027, and then we start a new one, and that's what we're working on now is the update through 2035. So we've discussed a lot about how the housing element requires us to plan for new housing, but it's much broader than that. There's also preservation of existing housing, which is an important topic in Eureka, especially in Eureka, because nearly 60% of our existing housing stock was built before 1960, and more than 80% was built before 1980. Fair housing has become a greater focus since our last housing element was adopted in 2019. There's two sides to that. It's looking at requiring cities both to expand access to housing and opportunity in high resource neighborhoods and invest in historically underserved neighborhoods. Another big topic for Eureka is housing instability and homelessness. And we have started to, Kelsey and I have started to do a lot of outreach, and that always addressing homelessness always comes up as the top priority of the community, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And then other things that it covers are housing needs of special needs populations, like accommodations for people with disabilities, housing affordability and displacement, and energy conservation in housing. So these are the components of a housing element. Community outreach and engagement, which Kelsey's going to talk about. There's a lot of background analysis. We're looking at demographic, employment, and housing trends and conditions that affect the housing needs of our community. We're looking at fair housing issues, such as disparities in access to opportunity. And we're looking at remedies, or analyzing and recommending remedies for existing and potential governmental and non-governmental barriers to housing development. And then also we're just looking at our current housing element and thinking about how well we did with our programs that we set out for ourselves over the last 8 years, and whether they're still appropriate and effective. And then there's the housing site inventory, and then there's goals, policies, and programs. And a housing element is an element of our general plan, but it's very different than the other elements in that it's more so action-oriented. And the programs are what the state is really focused on. And each of them has a completion date and measurable outcomes, and we report on them during our annual reporting. And the state follows up on that and expects us to follow through with our commitments. But we're not going to talk about the programs today. We're just going to cover community outreach and engagement. I'm going to talk a little bit about the housing site inventory, and then we're going to talk about goals. So I'm going to pass it to Kelsey to talk about engagement.
Okay, so getting into our outreach, we have been going very hard with outreach. And why would you participate? Well, first, the government requires that, or the state government requires that local jurisdictions do a diligent effort to achieve public participation from all economic segments of the community when developing our housing element. And they went one step further with this cycle and developed the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Questionnaire, which they're giving to local jurisdictions to identify areas of low income or some of the people that we might be missing when we're planning for housing. So why would you engage early? Well, it's more abstract when you're engaging early. So this is when we're trying to get people to think of how we can creatively create housing. This has the lowest participation because it is very abstract. So trying to get people early is really how we can get that pen to paper implementation measures and make what people actually want to see. But then later, when the housing element is adopted and the implementation measures are implemented, people start to notice, right? There's high visibility in these changes, and then people want to participate, but it's too late. So why are we doing outreach and how are we doing it? So we're starting with the Talk Eureka page. This is an interactive hub through Talk Eureka for the housing element. There's a bunch of different interactive activities, including a community survey, and that was developed based on needs in the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Questionnaire. So far, It has only been live for a little under a month, and we already have, well, we have over 50 responses, which is great. And then there's also quick polls and an idea board and an interactive map. And that one's cool because you can actually look at the city landscape and you'll notice it's very built out, and you'll try to think, where can I put 1,740 units? And it gives people the opportunity to think really creatively about where we can put this housing. We are also going to individuals. So to the left, you'll see a site inventory pamphlet that we're giving out to individual property owners. And this is to gauge interest from landowners to see who is interested in developing housing on their property. It doesn't lock the property owner into actually developing housing, but we can include it in our site inventory. And Kristen will get into that later. And we're also meeting the public where they are. So we have some targeted specific outreach, including one-on-one community partner interviews, tabling with community events. And then we have a big workshop on July 14th. So for the targeted outreach to specific groups, we have contacted over 60 organizations and individuals. And we have the opportunity, or when we contact them, we offer them different engagement methods. So we can either interview with them, we can offer a presentation, or we can go and do a tabling event. And so far, to date, we have interviewed the Eureka School Superintendent, the Housing Authority, the Uplift Team, Legal Services, HTA, HCOG, and the College of the Redwoods. And then when we are doing those those bigger group interviews, we are also developing surveys. So that way we can get a broader range of responses. So far, we've created the Housing and Homeless Provider Survey, industry professionals. So that's like property managers, developers for market rate and affordable housing, and realtors, employers, and businesses. And then we're also presenting to organizations individually. And we have presented to the Humboldt Interfaith Fellowship, the Economic Development Committee, the Continuum of Care, and the Economic Development Committee. And then we have a workshop coming up with Humboldt Association of Realtors. I always get that wrong, HAR. And then this is an example of a flyer that we're handing out to those individual participants. And then again, we're meeting the community where they are. So we're showing up to events, so many events. We've developed different activities to gauge different community members. One is What Fits Eureka. You can actually see it in the image on the right. It's images of different types of housing in Eureka, or maybe housing that we don't have in Eureka, and we ask people to vote. If you were to move tomorrow, what kind of house do you want available for yourself and your family? A hopes and concerns board. What do you hope for housing? What are you worried about for housing? Community priorities. This one is, as a city, what should we prioritize in our community? And you can only pick 3, so it's your top 3 priorities. Lived experience, so if you've looked for housing in Eureka, what have you experienced? What has been challenging? And then all this data is organized by renters, owner, or other status. And this is fun, so kids can also participate in where they want to live in Eureka. And the events that we've done so far is the Farmers Market at the Henderson Center. I'm going to be doing the Mattakit Market and the Old Town Farmers Market, Friday Night Market, Summer Concert Series. We're doing an ice cream social. We're doing Unity Day. And we participated at the community conversation on homelessness at Synapsis. And we have so many more coming up, which all leads to the workshop. So we're hosting a workshop on July 14th to try to bring everyone in from the community to get feedback. We're going to have more tailored, open-ended conversations about housing and implementation measures. Ideally, we are educating the public on the challenges of identifying places to put 1,740 units in the next 8 years. But this is also designed to gather strategies. So we have a hopes and concerns board, but this is going to be sectioned into greater categories: hopes and concerns for ADUs, for homelessness, for affordability. A cost and trade-off activity. We'll have a bunch of strategies that the city could actually implement to be able to address some of their concerns, and then they can vote on which one that they would actually prioritize. And then participatory mapping, a giant 14-foot by 14-foot map of the city of Eureka landscape, and we're going to ask people, where should we put housing? And then we want this to be accessible to everybody. So we're going to also have a kids zone where kids can draw their dream neighborhood and build little cities with blocks. We're going to have the event catered by Ramones. We're going to have free refreshments, door prizes. And if you like your stickers, I made a bunch more of little outreach materials that people can come and get. And we'll have a raffle. Oh, and we have a Spanish translator and a Hmong translator that'll be present. And so we had the question of what are we going to do with all of this data? Getting local knowledge from the people who are directly affected by housing helps us as a government create implementation measures to meet them where they are. So, for example, if a neighborhood is identified as under-resourced, we could identify programs or funds to be able to create parks or bikes in that area. Or if there's barriers to developing ADUs, we could try to figure out how to streamline the ADU process if it could be more streamlined. And then we also are building support from the community so we can show them this is how we're going to build housing. Don't be surprised when it shows up in your backyard one day. And then finally, the site inventory, we can try to find where we're going to put these housing units and hopefully get weigh-in from private property owners. And then Kristen will get into that further.
Yep. So I'm sure we'll talk about the site inventory a number of times as we get closer to adoption. And we've talked about it a number of times before. But basically, the state determines what our housing need is as a region through 2035 for net new housing units. And then that gets distributed among the jurisdictions. And then the cities and the unincorporated county, they then have to draft a plan showing how we can do that. So the state gives us a number based on need, not based on feasibility. And then they put it in our hands to show how it's going to be feasible. And so our allocation, our need that we need to meet is 1,740 net new housing units by 2035. And as we've talked about before, the city doesn't have to build the units. That would take away quite a lot of TOT. We just have to have a plan for how they're going to get built, for the capacity. We have to show that we can accommodate them, right? And so that's our site inventory. So we actually identify parcels. And if they're a vacant site, it's really easy. It's zoned for housing, it's vacant, it doesn't have major constraints, it can be hooked up to utilities. We can put it in the housing element and we can assign it a number of units. And we have to do this for all 1,740 of our units. If the site is non-vacant, that's the term they use. So vacant means empty. Non-vacant could be a vacant building. It could be a parking lot. Those are non-vacant sites. It's a harder bar. You have to show that there's a realistic and demonstrated potential for redevelopment during the planning period. And Eureka's challenge that we've talked about many times is that we have few of these vacant sites. So we're going to be relying on non-vacant sites. And it's hard for us to show a realistic and demonstrated potential because our housing market isn't, we're not getting a bunch of developers from out of the area wanting to build major subdivisions in Eureka. And on top of that, for our below moderate income RHNA, the state says parcels less than a half acre in size can't accommodate lower income RHNA. And we have very few parcels less than a half acre in size. And so last cycle, all the privately owned parcels less than a half acre in size, the state says those don't count. You need to take those out of your RHNA for below moderate income RHNA. And that's what led us to our most successful strategy from this last housing element. So the question I'm asking is what are strategies for adding housing to a well-developed urban city? Last time we took city-owned sites and we put them up for affordable housing development, and we're getting over 300 units from that program below moderate. And the state accepted these sites, even though they're mostly 1/3 of an acre sites. They're smaller than a 1/2 acre because we own them and we were putting them up for affordable housing development. So we were able to actually, we're looking like we're not going to just achieve our below moderate income RHNA from this last housing element cycle, but surpass it. Unfortunately, you don't get that carried over, right? That doesn't carry forward. We don't get that balance. And we relied on sites that we acquired in the 1950s and 60s mostly for this last housing element cycle. And we put those up. And so this is a limited resource, right? Putting up city-owned parcels is, unless we start acquiring more, which is quite costly. But this is a strategy that we used last time and was quite effective. Another strategy that's been working for us is accessory dwelling units. We've talked about how we're hitting 20 plus a year in Eureka, which is exciting. Also, our mixed use zoning districts, we no longer have commercial districts. They're all called mixed use districts. And they allow so much housing. Our zoning for them allows you to just build as much housing as your heart desires. And so they're a great opportunity for more housing, primarily apartments and condominiums. There's also all these other types of small housing that we can fit into our existing urban fabric. And these are rarer, but they're definitely on our community's collective vision board. We hear a lot about the desire for townhouses and live-work units and tiny house villages. I'm showing the hostel because there's also going to be efficiency dwelling units in their workforce housing. Something else that's been working for us is taking one lot that's like 6,000 to 10,000 square feet and then dividing it into 2, 3, 4 lots, small subdivisions, and then development of houses on small lots. This is a way that we're getting more owner-occupied housing is through smaller lots in our residential zones through these little subdivisions. And then internal conversions and adaptive reuse of existing buildings. This is showing some big homes that have been divided up, but we also are hoping that maybe some of our commercial vacancies can maybe become housing. And then maximizing the development potential of vacant and underutilized sites, like this former church parking lot that became 4 houses. So goals. I feel like goals is the most fun part of planning because we all can kind of agree at a goal vision level on things, and it just gets tricky when we get to the strategies point. But I wanted to share with you what our current housing elements goals are so we can think about if they still make sense or if we have new ideas now. So our current housing element has 7 goals. The first goal group, create affordable and market rate housing. Eureka's development regulations, permit processing procedures, and customer service standards are pro-housing. The city government actively facilitates the creation of housing for all income levels. Owner-occupied affordable housing is among the mix of housing types created in Eureka. Next, goal group 2, preserve and improve affordable and market rate housing. So this is about existing housing. All neighborhoods are clean and safe, and existing housing is well maintained. Existing affordable housing units are retained and preserved while displacement from housing is minimized. And then the third goal group is promote equal access to housing for all. All residents of Eureka have equal access to housing options, and the rate of homelessness in Eureka is substantially lower than it has been in the past. I feel like we could do better on that last goal. So questions we have for you all tonight are outreach. What would you like us to hear from the community at the workshop? Site inventory. Where do you see the greatest opportunity for new housing in Eureka? And goals, looking ahead to 2035, what changes would you most like to see in Eureka's housing opportunities and outcomes?
Thank you. And you're looking for direction, is that
correct?
So does anyone have any ideas for Director Kenyon?
Can I
Councilmember-
ask staff a question? I'm sorry, I feel.
City Manager Slattery, did you have a question?
Yeah, I would say, and I think we discussed this before, but I'm hoping that this is the case. But similarly to how we've described that, our previous rendition of the housing element, we tried to use ADUs as a solution for some of our housing needs, and we didn't have the demonstrated ability of doing so. Now that we have, we've gone from teens to the 20s of doing so. Similarly for affordable housing, when they've said that they will not accept less than a half an acre for affordable, now that we've demonstrated that, do you think that HCD may have a different opinion of that if we were to propose properties of less than a half an acre for affordable housing?
That's a big question. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to say.
I would hope.
I don't know if they're going to. Yeah,
I would hope the council would support us pushing that to HCD to demonstrate that we have been extremely, extremely successful in doing well less than a half an acre and having well over 30 units in each one of those. So.
And I definitely, throughout our background analysis, we're hyping all of the affordable housing that happened this cycle and showing how dense it is on how small of a lot, how few parking spaces we required, and how we did CEQA exemptions for all of them. So hopefully that will help us. But those were city-owned sites, not privately owned.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I don't know. I mean, I find it really hard to understand where to put 2,000 homes,
Yeah, don't.
It's close to 2,000. Okay, 1,740. Is annexation part of the discussion? I don't know if that's even. I'm just like, that's a wild thing.
Then we would get more arena. We would get a larger allocation if we. So I think it'd put us back at square one.
And we did do an annexation study 8 years ago.
2018, around when we did our general plan
about
update.
8 years ago. And that analysis that goes through LAFCO has to justify and the place that we did do was Brainerd at the time. The other locations either wouldn't be justifiable that we looked at or don't pencil out with the services we provide.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're kind of already surrounded by unincorporated neighborhoods, residential.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloach?
I know we had this discussion years ago, but remind me why we can't use our parking lot over at the mall.
So we only own the what they call the North 40, which is the overflow parking lot to the north of the development. We own that, but we had to lease the property back as a parking requirement for the mall. And so they have a long-term lease on that I think is up in 2035
or 2040,
somewhere around there. But we do.
But it's currently zoned coastal dependent industrial, and it's contaminated, and it's in a hazard area. So I don't foresee us getting a permit to put a housing there, but it would be a great place for a park and restoration long term.
Thanks.
Councilmember Castellano?
Let's see. I mean, in terms of I hope for the outreach in terms of like what I hope for you that you hear is, what people really believe or like want. I don't want to determine what people should tell you at the community workshop in terms of your question. Though I do hope that.
I meant like, what should we ask, not what should we hear? Okay. I apologize. That's
like, I don't know what people. I guess what people really think. Okay, different question. I'll come back to that one. Site inventory. I am really interested in kind of mixed use, residential, commercial, and maybe that relates to goals too. I would like for that to be considered in some way in goals, especially because. Right, those mixed-use sites do help us fund the city services that then support the residential sites. So looking at looking at that and maybe having that as a goal, and thinking about related to site inventory as well as like potential land banking. I do think that we have had the most success with sites that we own, and so I think that that's something that we should consider in terms of actually getting housing built. And possibly looking at like large sites, like, we all know the mall is having significant economic trouble, maybe not the parking lot, but the mall itself could have some housing and some, which might support commercial success there or something like that. I'll think about questions. I think generally it'd be great just to have questions that invite people to imagine from some different perspectives, like of lived experience. So just kind of factoring in different lived experience.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Moulton, then Fernandez.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that goes into this. I know it's an ongoing thing and it's just massive to wrap your head around. I'm sure that I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Castellano said about the mall. When people, because, it's right over there, people ask me about the mall all the time, talk to me about the mall, and they're like, why aren't we building housing there? And I say, well, because the city doesn't own it, except for the little part that we kind of do, or do, but can't really use how we want because it's all tied up. But what does that look like as far as incorporating something like the mall, a big property that's in the coastal zone, and it's not necessarily zoned for that? Is that even a possibility of adding something? How about the mall? Can you tell me a little bit about what it would take to make that?
It would take interested property owner. Then we could definitely put that mall in the site inventory. And there's over 3,000 parking spaces at the mall that were required. And now no parking is required at the mall because it is a major transit stop. So there is a lot of underutilized space there. We have had interest from, people have talked about mixed use development at the mall. Whether that, you really have to show that there has to be realistic and demonstrated potential, right? I learned that Monterey put their mall in their housing element, and they have limited water. So they used that to encourage their mall to develop housing. Their mall basically can't get another seat at a table in a restaurant. But they have, if they build housing, then they'll get more water somehow. So there's probably, and there's other places, if you show you're doing efforts to make that ripe for redevelopment, then we would have to have a set of actions probably. If the property owner wasn't interested, we would have to have a set of actions to show that we have a plan to somehow make it happen. Purchase it and put it up for housing in an RFP.
And I know we're 3 or 4 layers deep in receivers and bankruptcies of, I'm trying to talk to the people who run the mall, but has anybody talked to them about their interest in that?
So I've spoken to people who are interested in the mall, not necessarily the receiver. There is a receiver that's receiving a lot of inquiries from other people. They don't have true ownership or anything like that. They're just basically trying to make the best decision in the interest of the property, not necessarily controlling what happens. So it's somewhat similar to our receivership, but a bank had it, they defaulted, and now they have a receiver. They're trying to do what's in the best interest of the property.
I see. So trying to get the most capital out of it as possible.
Yes.
So if they can sell it to a big box store, they're going to do that. But if that means developing it for housing, then that's what they would do.
That's true. But we have had developers who are interested in, I guess I would call big box, that have other models where they do build housing as a part of that development as well.
Okay. One more, if you don't mind. You touched on commercial properties, and I like working in downtown and looking at the buildings that have like lots of empty offices that used to be apartments, and then they turn them into offices, and now we don't need the offices, and they sure could be apartments again, but that's a huge investment, right? And turning, putting in kitchens and bathrooms and all those things that they took out. How could the city help that to happen?
Yeah. A lot of it was, we just talked to somebody who's interested in putting housing back upstairs in an old town building, and they couldn't previously because there was a parking requirement. And so part of it is education, that some of the hurdles aren't there anymore. For that property, they had a housing occupancy and it's been vacant, so they can just jump back in. For others, it's a bigger struggle. If you didn't previously have a housing occupancy, then now you have to deal with current standards for accessibility, and that could mean adding an elevator, which we could not help people pay for. That's way too expensive for a tiny building to get an elevator. So there's some issues with, and double staircases. There's just really expensive upgrades that sometimes need to happen to buildings to add just one or two units to the point where it doesn't pencil out. But that was that's a program we could have, would be to work on that more and explore those units more. And if there is stuff we could do, we could, there's different, you can get state and federal money for these different programs to assist people in housing rehabilitation or ADA upgrades. So that could be something that we look at getting future CDBG money for.
But do you see that as a resource that's abundant? I mean, my impression of it is anecdotal, just talking to people, and looking for rentals. But is there a lot of unused commercial, like office space in Old Town that's not being?
That's what I've heard from Eureka Main Street, just that there is a lot of upstairs vacancies. And we pulled the data for the water meter usage, and we're going to look at that as part of the site inventory analysis. So we'll have, once I get a handle on, I just got that data. So once I get into it more, I'll have more info for you on the number of properties I think are vacant.
Thank you. I love the potential there for folks that maybe could be, upgrading their stuff and developing it, but just don't know about the new requirements or don't know about the lack of parking requirements, things like that. Love the idea. Density. Yes.
I will say it still would be beneficial for those who have those barriers that we keep in contact with them, because if there is interest, we'd want them to give us that information so that we can share that they are interested in putting housing there, which will help us in compliance with our RENA.
Okay.
Thank you. If you know any large property owners that own, large underutilized sites, please tell them to say they're interested in housing, and then maybe they will become interested in housing. A great thing about getting in the housing inventory is that then you are CEQA exempt going forward. The housing, that was part of the CEQA reforms that just came through with the bill, with the budget, how they made all those CEQA reforms. One of them was really, if you're in the housing element, then you're CEQA covered. So there's a real benefit to saying you're interested in putting housing on your property and getting into our site inventory.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez, then Castellano, and then Contreras-Deloach.
Thank you. Similar to Councilmember Castellano's point, definitely have a conversation or feedback about what mixed-use residential would look like among the community, particularly as it relates to having a walkable community or a bikeable community. What is it that they'd want to see then to maybe ease transportation? Are they familiar with microtransit? What does that look like for them? So understanding that too, just even the presentations that we've had in the last few months, particularly I think the most recent one from the students being the properties owned by
faith-based
institutions. Yeah, and again, back to the mall, like, but particularly faith-based institutions, because I know at least there's feasibility in that over the mall. But also looking at site inventory, like what properties does the state have that they might be able to coordinate with us on if they're willing to at all?
Yeah, I remember we had this conversation, and I will make sure we send a email to the state about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano.
Okay, I thought of a couple questions. Let's see. I was curious if people have experienced housing insecurity. What were the causes? And then, how do people imagine staying in Eureka for a long time? Like, what are their long-term housing goals? And that kind of relates to, I think one of the goals is just opportunities for home ownership. And I know that the ADU program is sort of, that is one of the goals of the ADU program, but, I think that, continuing to find different ways that people can, get into housing. Oh, and then also I guess it's already in the goal, but just, I still think there's some things that could be done in terms of addressing vacancies or underutilized housing, or housing that's like in need of repair to house more people, things like that.
Thank you. Councilmember Contreras-Deloche.
Yeah, well, first, thank you guys. I appreciate this, huge strategy, your big rollout in this plan. So I appreciate that there's going to be such a huge amount of engagement on the city's end that really, everybody should be able to participate that wants to. And so I think that's great. Well, you guys will have done your part. So one of the questions I had was, I know that sometimes big box stores will use housing to streamline their building process. Is that something that's an option for us to look into?
Costco did that in LA recently.
Yeah.
They built housing because it streamlined their retail. We already allow most everything by right. So there's an advantage to building housing if there's commercial zones that don't allow housing, but our commercial zones all allow housing by right. But we can think about that more, like are there ways that we could incentivize these big box stores to add housing?
Yeah, or, every time someone calls and is interested in something, you'd be like, and by the way, we also have this option.
Yeah.
We just like to mention this possibility to you. And then I was wondering if there is ways for us to further relax or even grandfather in some local stuff that allows people to adapt those old properties easier, like with less requirements. That's more like maybe what the requirement would have been around the origin of the building or somewhere.
Yeah. We have the historic building code that does give you some relief, but we could look into more regulatory relief if you're giving this big community benefit of upgrading a really old property or a long vacant property or something. We could think of additional regulatory incentives.
Yeah,
we do have like you discussed previously, if there was upstairs unit in Old Town that was used for housing and then it was converted, and if they wanted to go back, they get to go back without the new ADA requirements, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's a big benefit.
Yeah, and then I just had one last one. The minimum lot size that's required for people to be able to sell a portion of their property, what do we have that set out right now?
Yeah, so that is something I was thinking we've talked about going smaller, or the city council has talked about going smaller, and that really excited me. And this is the opportunity to do it because we're opening up our general plan, which sets it at 22 units per acre in our R2 and 44 units per acre in our R3, which And the minimum lot size in both those districts is 2,000 square feet, and the minimum lot size in our R1 district is 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So we could think about going smaller.
I know some of the communities in other areas, particularly coastal communities, some of them have really dramatically shrunk their required lot size. And I feel like that's a good option for us to explore for home ownership specifically, because it may not necessarily always make sense for everybody to build an ADU, but building something that can be split and sold, where those people that have invested in it can recoup those costs, immediately and create home ownership opportunities that are a lot more affordable. I feel like that is something that, would be feasible for people that an ADU wouldn't be as feasible for.
Councilmember Bauer.
I want to tear off of that too, because I think of I see lots around town where you have a small home and then a huge grass lawn, like easily put another 2-3 houses on that if they could split it, and have the lot sizes small. There's a ton of those around town. So that to me for site inventory, I don't know how that works, but the problem really though is the building is so expensive. I think people may want to do it, like I think of a place that you could split and build a whole nother home, but nobody can afford to do it. So we can do all we can with, making it so that it's essentially a one-page application to get a building permit, but it doesn't affect the cost of building. So to me, that's the hurdle we face. All communities face. What's that? Well, I mean, we have that, we have the regs, we have the ability to do it very simply, but it's just the cost is so high. But nevertheless, we should explore like splitting lots, making them as small as possible for little, for single family homes. They're small, but people, 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, is bigger than an ADU, but people want those. And then I was thinking about the site inventory, the Eureka Mall, that parking lot besides Winco is empty all the time. I mean, in front of CVS and then on the north side.
If we could get an interested property owner,
oh my God,
from the Eureka Mall, if you're listening,
that's you, Greg.
We want you,
Greg,
in our site inventory.
Yeah, a lot of units could go there. But yeah, that's it. Thanks.
We also talked to. There is a little like parcel next above that's owned by the school that isn't being used.
Right next to Winsler.
That they aren't even using for like ball fields. It's just unused lot that they own. So that would be a great place for teacher housing.
So a little history on that. We were going to trade for that property, and we were going to trade what they currently use as their bus courtyard on 14th Street. That used to be our property, and we were planning on trading that with Eureka City Schools. And the previous council decided to just sell the property to Eureka City Schools and not do the trade. So it's likely still available.
Councilmember Castellano. I see.
Just real quick, I was looking at this property owner interest form. Sorry. Okay, I was looking at this property owner interest form, and I feel like some people may not understand what it means to like want to build housing. You know what I mean? Like is this an ADU? Is it a small lot subdivision? Is it, anyway? So
it could be anything.
Exactly. So like, because, and I know of all these things, but even I who am interested potentially in an ADU, I'd be like, should I be filling this out or not? So I don't know. You may want to kind of just offer a little explanation in terms of like types of housing people might want to consider building.
Okay. Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you for goals. I know it's something I've brought up, and we have maybe a decade if we're looking at 2035, and so I know that. The low-income housing that is provided is deed restricted for 50 years, and it's all rentals. So is there a way that we could find a pathway for home ownership in that sense? And I guess that would be a goal I'd want to try and figure out by 2035.
Turning them into not rentals anymore.
Yeah.
Cooperative sort of.
Well, I mean, just so that way there's that opportunity to build that equity, to have that generational wealth. I mean, you've been renting for however long it may be. If there's an opportunity then to purchase that unit or something, some way to have that.
Yeah, I am definitely concerned for 55 years from now, because we are building over 300 units right now, and they all are going to come up on their end of their term at the same time. Part of that's something that we look at in our housing element. We look at are there any deed restricted affordable units that are coming close to their end of their term, and there are a few developments in Eureka that will term out this next housing element cycle, and so you have to think about are there ways for somebody else to purchase that and keep it affordable.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? Okay, and you have the direction you need. I am going to see if anybody from the public wants to comment on this item. So does anyone want to come forward and give your 3 minutes of ideas? Hello again.
Hello. I noticed the Travelers Hostel, the picture that was on the slides of the Travelers Hostel, and I was going to say I actually was part of the construction and the renovation of that building last summer, and I was going to say other buildings of the like could be renovated that are empty buildings that are sitting around Old Town, things like that. Could be renovated. Then there's also large pieces of land all along the waterfront area past Target, like going up towards the bridge. There's empty lots over there that could be potential lots that are good for building. And then like the Conex box idea is a really good idea, for putting up housing in those types of areas, the fields. So that's what I've got. I know that I'm excited to see when that Travelers Hostel is up and running. Hostel.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would care to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we're going to thank these ladies for an excellent presentation. You have the direction you need. So we're going to move on to our small business incentives. With Director Kenyon.
Good evening again. This one's really short. This is in response to, I think, Councilmember Castellano was mentioning or Councilmember Fernandez, sorry, was mentioning Fort Bragg and their efforts with a fee waiver for small businesses. So I looked into that. And this came up during the budget when we were talking about how do we get more economic development in Eureka, particularly through small businesses. So Fort Bragg has a BEAR strategy. They call it that. It's business expansion, attraction, and retention to help small local businesses start, grow, and stay in the community. And it's made up of a lot of different things, and they keep adding things. It started around a few years ago. They established an economic development department in 2024, which is something that we have an economic development division. They also have a facade improvement grant program, which Eureka also has. They have a vacant commercial registry, which is something that we're working towards. They have a low interest business loan program, which we've previously had. They have a very interesting sewer water impact fee deferral program, which allows developers to not have to pay their impact fees prior to occupancy. They give them 5 years to pay them over time. So it's not a waiver of fees, it's a deferral of fees. And then the one that we're talking about tonight is their first year business fee waiver program, which they just adopted in February of 2026. They were having their first fee schedule update since 2019, and it came with that. And their eligibility is only for newly establishing operations in the city, for businesses with 10 or fewer employees that are individually owned and operated, not a subsidiary of a regional, national, or international corporation. And then they waive select city administrative fees commonly incurred during startup. Business license, sign permit, zoning clearances on building permits, minor use permits, and other. They don't waive utility charges or building permits themselves or public noticing costs or code upgrades. It's just these minor fees that that are common for new businesses. And I'm showing on this slide both their fee amount and our fee amount. And so they have it, so it's a one-time eligibility per business entity and physical location with a cap of $3,000 per business. It applies only during their first year of operation, and it must be at a location that's legally permitted under the zoning code. So you can't get fee waivers for a business license that is to go somewhere where you can't really have that business. Overall, there's a cap of $25,000 per year of city funds allocated to this program, with annual reporting on participation and fiscal impacts, and a 2-year sunset period unless their city council extends it. And if there's limited funds, they have prioritization policies to prioritize their downtown, long-term vacancies, and properties subject to their registry, which are the vacant and blighted properties. And so my thoughts on it are that often new businesses only need a business license at $77. It's more symbolic than substantive in terms of helping small businesses if you're just waiving a $77 business license fee. But for Fort Bragg, it makes sense as part of this larger business attraction and retention program. They're selling the things they do as this collective. We care and want to promote small businesses. And so that's all I have on that.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Kenyon? Councilmember Moulton?
Pardon me, what is it that you said was a different price for a local business versus a large out-of-town one? One of the first things you mentioned.
It was eligibility for the fee waiver. You're only eligible if you're a small business with 10 or fewer employees and you're not an out-of-town corporation. You're individually owned and operated.
I thought we couldn't do that.
For fee waivers?
I thought that we weren't able to charge different fees to different businesses based on their size. Because we've floated that idea before when we were talking about economic development.
I think it depends on whether or not council agrees to subsidize that program with general fund. So we've said that as it relates to water and sewer fees, if you guys wanted to provide a senior rate, and I'm sure our city attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, you could do so, but it would need to be subsidized by the general fund to cover that enterprise fund.
Part of it's not two different fees. It's one fee, but some people we're paying their fee for them. So like we're not saying small businesses are getting a lower business license fee. We're saying we're paying that business license fee for them.
So I'm remembering now the conversation we were having. It was when we were talking about shopping cart recovery, and someone talked about, and we had the idea of charging smaller local businesses less money to recover their shopping cart. Do you remember this? Am I making this up? And we were told that we couldn't charge one business one fee for the same service that we're giving to another business for the same, like we'd have to charge them the same. So are you saying that there's a way to then, rather than charging two different fees, provide a fee waiver and create criteria for that? Not for that specific thing, but like if that's a possibility, I would like to know about it. Because in my mind, when we talk about this kind of stuff and we talk about supporting local businesses and small businesses, I have this block of like, well, we can't charge them different amounts of money. That's against the rules. But now I'm hearing that maybe it's not against the rules.
I think this is not a super simple question.
Okay, it depends.
And
Thank
I
you,
think
the lawyer answer.
It's going to be very case and fact specific.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand how Fort Bragg has rationalized what they're doing, and I think it probably is legal, because what they're not saying that the fee is different for different kinds of businesses, but they are saying that we think it's in the public interest to take public general funds and subsidize one type of business that is likely to have much more trouble getting off the ground. And we want these businesses to get off the ground. We're going to use some general funds to help them out. The issue of the carts, I'm having a hard time recalling the specific context. Like, what did we want to do with respect to smaller grocery operations?
If I remember correctly, there's a fee that's basically covering what it costs to take the carts back to the place.
Yeah, there was
and
it was
we
like
wanted
$75 a cart. Or it was.
We don't need to get into the details, but something
Yeah,
we're charging it
substantial,
to
though.
the business.
Yeah.
And that business was being charged for the service of returning their property to them.
Yeah.
And we were discussing how that affects small businesses and our small local grocery stores more so than big box stores, which may or may not even care if we bring their carts back. So okay.
But I think
it's not a tax and it's not a fine.
Yeah.
It is a fee for a service, which
Yeah.
is what the building permits are. So I'm just gonna file that now as a possibility and bring it up later.
I do want to, as far as the shopping carts was concerned, if you look at it from the local store, those stores, so I'll be specific, Eureka Natural Foods. When you compare Eureka Natural Foods to, let's say, the old Ray's that was in town, the number of employees and everything, it was just the difference between them being a local thing and a franchise type of thing. So I think that was what was somewhat unique to that, was that these stores we were talking about weren't necessarily smaller or had less employees. One was a local company and the other one was a franchisee. So grocery outlet versus Eureka Natural Foods.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, what I'm going to take away from this is that there is potential to, rather than create tiers of fees, create a criteria-based fee waiver under certain circumstances. And if it comes up again, I'll ask again. Okay.
So I would like you to take away that we can look at each situation where you think it would be appropriate to differentiate among business types and sizes and types of ownership, and propose what you think is, the best alternative. And we examine that from the point of view that, certain types of discrimination are not allowed, but there are other ways to come at a particular problem, and we'd like to be able to examine those when you think that would be a good public policy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Fernandez.
When we were having this conversation that led to the request for this presentation, thank you, by the way, and the numbers, at least knowing that it would largely save $77 for maybe, we were having the conversation as well about cottage industries. And so, $77 for, I can't pick any one business that might have an impact for, but definitely for someone starting up something, whether it's baked goods or any paraphernalia coming out of their house, $77 for the year might seem, it might, I don't want to say onerous, but it definitely has an impact on that bottom line for that first year. So it's definitely something I would still want to consider moving forward with. And that would just be the business license, and you had pointed out some other fees as well. So for smaller businesses, say in Old Town, when any of those have a larger impact.
If somebody wanted to put up a sign, they waive that sign permit fee. I would recommend against that because it's usually the sign company that comes in for the sign permit. and I would assume that it wouldn't get passed on to the businesses. But the minor use permit, if you need a minor use permit, that's expensive. You know, you could get up to $3,000 if you needed that. We've had a few businesses that needed that, like an auto-oriented business in our downtown. I would recommend against including vacation rentals in the list of small businesses because we're not trying to incentivize lots of vacation rentals. Great. I thought of that because they used to need a minor use permit, but.
So we have received a report. Is there any further questions, Councilmember Castellano?
So it would be good, just so staff knows how to move forward. The reason we brought this forward for this meeting is because we have some other adjustments to the fee schedule that we would like to make at the same time. And so we'd like to get, obviously, I think Director Kenyon gave her opinion on what staff recommends to be waived, which would be minor use permit fees and
zoning clearances,
business licenses. And then that would be for only businesses that are not a part of a franchise, are 10 employees or less, and owned and operated by a single individual, correct?
Yes.
And not short-term rentals.
So that's what staff is recommending. If council can say move forward with that for the fee schedule or not to do that or any adjustments, that would help.
So it says receive a report. Are you needing a motion?
Just direction.
If
you want to.
Because I do want to open it up to public comment for
Yep.
a moment.
Yep.
So
Sorry.
after Councilmember Castellano asks her question or gives her direction, we will open this item to public comment. Carry on.
Thank you. This is great. It's great to learn a little more about the program in Fort Bragg. I wish I had brought it up earlier, but there's a program I've been looking at that I mentioned to economic development folks. I think they'll talk about it maybe in relationship to the cottage industry stuff, but the SF New Deal has kind of similar but different economic development incentives for small businesses. Obviously, some of those are at the scale of like a large city with major corporations that can provide investments. So, we may or may not be able to implement some of them. But, and like one of the things in the SF New Deal program is something like where they help support businesses entering into vacant storefronts, and and I'm just kind of curious, like, I know we wouldn't use our housing trust fund for something like that, and it seems like in the past we've given some sort of like small business loans or patient loans or something, but has there been any history of like a sort of like startup for small business loan program or fund or something that might be able to support sort of like this, like, there's places where we want small businesses to go into, like these vacant properties, and how can we kind of help them along the way?
So in my history, we've done something similar to that with COVID, when we had COVID and we had the CV money that we gave businesses funds. As far as a business loan program, I'm not familiar. We've done first-time home buyers, obviously, and those type of things. But as far as funding that we'd received or general fund monies to support a program, I'm not familiar.
We have our economic development staff here if they want to.
Well, hello.
Hello, Mayor and Council. It's my understanding we did used to do business loans when I first started at the city. We were not very good at it. It was CDBG funding that was used for business loans. And what it seemed to happen was there'd be requirements on how the money could be loaned. And so we'd get into a position of having to kind of fumble to find businesses to fit those regulations, and then we do the loans, and it just kind of got to a place where businesses were failing, and we had odd equipment. Like at one point we had a mushroom kiln that we had to sell, and so we stopped doing that. There's a lot of partners in our community that do this, REDEC, North Edge, There's a lot of options for financing. And so I think we've kind of decided of doing, I know I say this a lot, but doing fewer things better. And so doing small business loans is something that we haven't pursued. Also, when we go after CDBG funding, you have to choose what pots of money you're doing. So if we do go after that, then that's an opportunity cost of going after it for something else. So.
Thanks. Thank you. That's helpful. I think also just something even like beyond loans, like mini grants. And I know COVID allowed us to do that. But anyway, I think in San Francisco it's more possible because they have these like major investors. But I do want to keep kind of chewing on these thoughts a little.
Okay, thank you. So now we will open this item up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing no one, we'll bring it back. Do you feel like you have the direction that you need?
No, should we put it in to vote on or
a thumbs up for
consensus?
What staff is recommending? Yeah.
I think we want to
elevator pitch it.
Oh, the what staff's recommending is making fee waivers for businesses of 10.
Well, we're not recommending that you do this. We're saying if you do this, we recommend that it follow these parameters.
Okay, yeah. So, which is 10 employees or less, not owned by a franchisee or it's owned by a single.
We'd bring back program details. I think that they would adopt with the fee schedule.
Okay, well, the fees we need to know. So the fees we need to know, which is being recommended, are waiver of the business license, waiver of a zoning clearance, waiver of a conditional use permit, and there was one more, was there not?
So we would be waiving all of that?
For
up
those,
to $3,000
up to
per
$3,000
business.
per business.
Do I guess from how it affects the city's finances perspective, like similar to Fort Bragg, like they had a cap of $25,000 a year. Would that make sense to consider a cap?
Yes.
So why don't you present something and then we can make a decision on that?
Okay, but can we make it clear? Is it just those 3 fees that we're talking about, Director Kenyon?
Minor use permit, zoning clearance, and business license.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, those are the 3 we're talking about.
And do you need the exact fee today, or you?
No, it's going to be
just those 3
just
things.
that
So do we
bring
have
back
consensus on those 3 items?
Including the cap.
That'll come back as a part of the program.
So not including the cap. So we've got 3 over here, we got 2 over here. We're golden. Thank you so much. All right. So that will move us to future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items? Thank you, Director Kenyon.
Thanks.
Councilmember Moulton.
I just wanted to. Okay. Do I need to bring back the idea, since we're talking about the fee schedule, of creating additional discount categories for the zoo?
Those, not for the parking.
Well, we were talking about the parking and the zoo.
We can bring the zoo. We do have a reduced, when we discuss that, we do have a reduced fee for, and I'm going to get the program that you're a part of, but we do have a reduced fee for Wicker.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That's why we kind of dropped that one, because
Yes.
that is already an option. There's discounts there. Okay,
Yes.
so then the different discount categories for the parking permits in Old Town.
Correct. Those are the other fees that I was referring to.
Is now the time to bring that up?
We're going to bring that back as a part of the updated fee schedule.
Okay, so I don't need to additionally ask for that now.
No.
Okay, great. Never mind.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Castellano.
I think this would be sort of a city manager report sort of item, but I think it would be great to have a update on the Housing Trust Fund and just sort of like where the ADU incentive program is at.
Okay, so how does everybody feel about that? Good, all thumbs up. Any other future agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we will move to our city manager reports with City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and Council. I have the fortunate pleasure of introducing Project Manager Jeff Davis. He is going to provide an update, as you all know, when we first started Bayside Village, which was a very long process and had a lot of different barriers to overcome, thanks to our staff and Jeff Davis for doing so. We had an operator, Betty Chin. Foundation was operating the facility. It didn't work out for them. And since May 15th of this year, your staff have been operating a shelter down at the Crowley property. And Special Project Manager Davis, or Social Services Manager Davis, is here to provide an update.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start this report with a brief video that kind of shows an overview of a brief overview of what it took to get this property up and running. A brief interview with some of the folks on site and a staff member. And I'd like to just point out that this was a video created by our Uplifts media coordinator, Joseph Carter.
Nice.
So this project dates back to at least 10 years ago. I'd say approximately 10 to 2016. It was soon after the Palco Marsh transition, and then they were looking at more space for interim housing, and so at that point in time, PG&E had a project that they were working on, and they abandoned their work trailers, and those trailers were about to leave the area, and so both Betty's board as well as other folks interested in providing housing thought that this would be a good option to turn that place into that. So we stored those trailers down there, and then because of the zoning in that area, we had to make a lot of changes to the zoning. We created our own zoning designation called the Q zone. It allows for temporary housing there. That process took at least 2 to 3 years. It had to go through the Coastal Commission to get certified. It did. We had to do a wetland delineation. Then we had the vandalism to the trailers. That delayed the project probably another year or so. And then we had a really competent staff member take on the responsibility of finding funding to make that project happen. And that staff member found in Captain Resolution funding that purchased the units that we currently have out there. All said and done, it was complete, and now we have 38 beds out there.
And so the Bayside Village is considered an emergency shelter, and truly it is so much more than that. It is a bridge of communities, of communication, of living and experience, education. It is a healing space, not only for those that participate within the shelter program, it's also a healing space and a safe space for anyone that works here and the guests that visit here.
Aurora's been a blessing to have here with us because she's the one that motivates us to, get out here and, start doing something. Because when we see her working out here, it's like, she don't live here. She manages it here, but that's our responsibility too. It's a community, but technically speaking, we're family. We help each other out. We have our ups and downs, but we managed to iron that out. I've been homeless for 20 years. I've been on the streets for 20 years, or 19 years, because I've been here a year. I'm 60 years old, and it got too much for me to keep camping. First it didn't bother me, and then it just got to the point where after I have to pick up all our stuff and move it and that, and me, I have to have a lot of clothes and that and blankets, and it got pretty hard on me, and I'm thankful to get into here because now I don't have to worry about my stuff being stolen or taken, just out of greediness, but I can have my stuff now and enjoy my stuff for a long time. And I'm happy to be here. my daughter and my three boys are happy to see me off the streets. You know, I go up there and stay with my daughter once in a while, but they got a life, and I don't want to be intruding on it. But this is just temporary housing. I'm looking forward to getting another apartment for me and my son, my younger son, because I don't want to live alone.
I've been here since the end of April, and there have been huge changes. I have been able to see people to reinvigorate a new lease on life, to feel dehumanized and come into a place of recognizing their own humanity reflected back to them. A complete turnaround in the entire space and the people, all of the people that are here. I have seen it go from kind of a sad feeling to a very much alive feeling and place to be.
Right. I want to thank Joseph Carter again for all his time and effort that went into filming and editing and creating that video. So yeah, the city of Eureka took over site control, site management of the Bayside Village on May 15th of this year. And in this couple of months or so, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of upgrades to that site. One of the main things that we're doing is we are changing the model type. So it was started as a transitional housing project when Betty Quan Chin's Homeless Foundation operated it. With that, there are some ups and downs, some pros and cons to that. There are strict time limits on how long folks can stay there. And the way she operated it was folks had 1 year to stay there, to stabilize, and to move on to permanent housing. Many of the folks on that site currently had been experiencing homelessness for 10, 15, 20, 25, one individual experiencing homelessness for 36 years before moving to that site. And so to ask someone that had been experiencing homelessness for decades to within 1 year to stabilize and to move on to permanent housing was just unrealistic. So the city came in, we've changed the project type. It is a emergency shelter now. We are honoring all of the leases that these tenants had signed with Betty. So if folks want to stay under the transitional housing project model, they are allowed to do that. If they would like to switch over to our emergency shelter model, they're welcome to do that early as well. One of the benefits of switching over to the emergency shelter is they can regain their chronic status. So everyone on that site, whether it was transitional or emergency shelter, retained their homelessness status, but they lost their chronic status when they entered into a transitional housing project model. One of the big benefits of having that chronic status is you're eligible for a lot of different programs. For permanent supportive housing is a main one. Today there are 26 people that are residing on that site. I believe tomorrow there'll be one less because one person is transitioning over to permanent supportive housing. And so since the city took over in May, Open Door Mobile Medical now visits that site regularly. We're having housing navigation services offered daily on that site. And it's just the beginning. We're really dialing things in. The capacity is a little bit more. There was some maintenance that needed to be done, some repairs that needed to be done. We're hoping next week to be moving more folks in so we can get back up to that capacity of 38 people. It's kind of a slow process, but there is a sense of urgency to get folks off of the street and into that facility. The grant requirements are still in place. So to be eligible for that program, folks would need to be residing in specific encampments along the waterfront trail. We have a list about 30 folks or so that are interested in this property in entering this program, and we want to allow them to stay as long as possible. Like today, if someone signed up for public housing, because the housing choice voucher, it used to be called Section 8, you can't even apply for that. The window is closed. They aren't accepting those applications. If you wanted to sign up for public housing, it could take several years to get to the top of that list. So we want to allow folks to stay there as long as they need to stabilize and to move on to permanent housing. And like I said, we're offering a lot of new services. We're still dialing things in, and the hope is to get up to full capacity here in the next few weeks. And yeah, staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Director Davis? Councilmember Contreras Deloach.
How many total units are there?
So there's 33 units. Some of those are double units with bunk beds, so there are 38 beds within 33 units. Not all of those units are currently ready for folks to move in. There's some repairs still ongoing. We have been working with, and I should say, and I think I mentioned this at last year's update, that Mercer Fraser and Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services had key roles in getting this up and running. And we are working closely with Humboldt County's the Health and Human Services Employment Training Division through the Work Experience Program, and we have a maintenance technician, a couple of maintenance technicians that are helping out with this property. And so there's about, I think, 4 rooms that need some more repairs, but I believe there are about 5 or 6 that are almost, should be in the next couple of weeks move-in ready.
So had those units had people in them previously, or if they have always been empty?
They had they had folks residing in them previously. Some of those units sustained some damages during the folks staying there, and so we are repairing those and getting them move-in ready. We're doing some painting and some other related maintenance upgrades.
Okay, so it sounds like the vacant units are mostly a maintenance issue. I was curious. I was like, with so many people needing housing, I was wondering why they're vacant, but it sounds like it's a safety and get things fixed.
Yeah, and the number one priority is health and safety on that property. We had to dial in quite a few things. We had to enforce some rules that maybe weren't enforced in the past, and really, I've just noticed a huge change. There's been a huge change. I know Betty and her foundation did an amazing job for that first year. A transitional housing project model is extremely difficult to run. They did an amazing job at the task that they were given. But I think it was just for that population, that 1-year time limit wasn't realistic. And I think we were at a point where numerous folks were hitting that 1-year deadline, and that would have been back on the streets. And we wanted to do everything possible to avoid that.
Well, thank you so much.
Councilmember Bauer, did you have something? No. Councilmember Fernandez, did you have something?
Yeah, so with folks are able to stay within the chronic status, which gives them, access to more services. Yes, and so with this transitional housing portion gone, is there a time limit to which they're constrained being there, or is it, I'm on the Section 8 list, but I have to wait 6 years, like that?
Yeah, I mean It's difficult. There's a lot of different definitions, and even the same agency has multiple definitions. But we are committed to doing everything we can to allow these folks to stay there as long as they need to.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, well, Jeff Davis, I just want to appreciate you. You see the humanity in people, and I really and you honor that. And Joe, that was a great video. Thank you so much. It's so great to watch people that I've known for years moving on into a different experience in life, and to being seen and being recognized and being valued. Truly is a gift. Thank you. And with that, we're adjourned.